Good evening, everybody. We'll call the Clovis Council meeting to order on February 11th, 2025 at 6 p.m. At this time, we'll have the flag salute. Y'all can rise, and Councilman Bessinger will lead us.
Please join me in saluting the flag of our republic. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I know, how did that work? Your hair looks good. Your hair looks good.
I had a different name on my little cheat sheet here. My apologies.
I did it.
Okay.
It's my turn, Brianna, not his, not Bruce's turn.
Okay.
Oh.
Can we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Councilmember Ashbeck?
Or is it Bessinger that you want?
Answer two. Ashbeck is here and possibly Bessinger too. Councilmember Bessinger?
Here.
Councilmember Pierce?
Here.
Here. And Mayor Mwanatua?
Here.
And Councilmember Baskel is absent today.
Okay. And Brianna, remind me again, we can't start before 6:03 on the next item. We can.
That is correct.
Okay. So, but after 6:03, we can start with.
Correct.
Okay. All right. We do have a public hearing on the transition to districts, but we still have a couple minutes. So at this time, we're going to go ahead and open public comment, see how many we can get in. Might just be one or two before we go into our district presentation from our demographer.
If they want more than...
And if you want to speak longer, then you will have to wait till after our discussion on districts, because that is agendized for 6:03. Please state your name and your address for the record. Go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Armin Devedjian. I am a resident of Clovis. I have lived in Clovis, California since 1982, so 43 years. On and off, but mostly on, less off. And it's a pleasure to address the council today. I'm here, obviously, due to some recent current events, things in the news. I am a small government classic conservative, and I would hope that those who believe the way I believe also believe that a local government's responsibility is to serve its citizens in the best and most efficient way possible, focusing primarily on safety, supporting our law enforcement, making sure that fires are put out, that trash is picked up, that potholes are filled, and that building permits are issued. Anything that exceeds those services to our citizens, I believe, does not fall in line with what is, in the essence, small government conservative values and ideas. I don't understand what the problem is that we're trying to solve when we dip our toe into national controversial topics. Whether or not we agree or disagree with the current administration is not at the heart of the matter of being a resident and a citizen of Clovis. We have elected officials in Sacramento, and we have elected officials in Washington, D.C., that, for better or worse, are trying to serve our needs when it comes to immigration, when it comes to law enforcement at the federal level, and when it comes to keeping us safe as a national entity. However, again, as a small government, classical conservative, I just want my trash picked up. I want my building permits issued. I don't want things to fall down. I want fires to be put out, and I want our police to be supported to the best possible and most possible extent. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Armin. Okay. This time I'm gonna not close, but hold off on the public comment because we have scheduled at 6:03 one item, and this is information this is the fourth public hearing on the city's transition to district-based elections. And staff on this is our city clerk, Brianna Parra.
Thank you, Mayor and Councilmember. Tonight is an update on the city's transition to district-based elections. Sorry about that. And we are seeking direction from council regarding the selection of a draft map. A Additionally, I wanted to remind the council that our next public hearing is scheduled for March 4th, where the ordinance introduction for district-based elections will be presented. A little bit of background. On August 26th, 2024, the city received a demand letter from the Southwest Voters Registration Education Project alleging that there was racially polarized voting existing in Clovis. And on October 7th, 2024, the council adopted a resolution 24-110 to transition to district-based elections to avoid costly litigation. This transition will begin with the November 2026 city council election. As part of this process, the city is required to hold at least 5 public hearings to allow for public input and council discussion on the districting process and potential district maps. The public hearings and outreach consist of the November 16th was our first public hearing. We held one on December 16th, which was our second public hearing. On January 21st, we had our third public hearing, which was the first maps that were reviewed. And then today, we have our fourth public hearing, and we will be reviewing maps as well. The city has worked to ensure public engagement is engagement. We have created a web page for our community to go to with information. We also hosted a workshop on January 9th and encouraged public participation in the map drawing process. Tonight's discussion is the second hearing in which the council will review and consider the draft district maps. Some maps have been prepared by the city's demographer, while others were submitted by the public. The demographer will provide an overview of each map, ensuring they meet federal and state legal requirements. This meeting is informational, meaning no final decision is being made tonight. However, we are seeking direction from the council on the selection of a map to move forward. Our next steps is the next public hearing again is scheduled for March 4th, 2025, where the council will introduce an ordinance formally establishing the district-based elections. Now I'm going to turn it over to Jeff from NBC.
Hey, great. Thank you very much. That's a great introduction, and I think my work's finished for tonight, so thanks. But it's great to be back again in Clovis, and as she was mentioning, you know, there's been a schedule, and this will be the fourth of 6 hearings. The next one will be, as you mentioned, next month. There's still time for the public to participate in providing draft maps with a deadline of February 21st to submit a map from the public. And the tools are available on the city's website. So feel free to submit a map, and we'll go from there. So in this process, it's been my work and my pleasure, actually, to help guide council and the community on following the particular laws as it relates to this process. We're trying to create 5 districts of equal population. It's rather difficult to do that. We use the census every 10 years. We use the census in this particular incident, well, actually in every one of them. But it's really difficult to come up with a precise equal population in each district. So the courts have allowed up to a 10% variance. And when you hear me talking about the deviation or variance tonight on each map, that's what I'm referring to. We must follow the Federal Voting Rights Act, and we can have no racial gerrymandering. And now we shift to California's rules, and they must be in prioritized order, that the districts must be geographically contiguous. The extent possible is to avoid dividing neighborhoods and or communities of interest. We want to have easily identifiable boundaries, which is pretty simple to do in the Central Valley. And then we want our districts to be compact. We don't want districts to look like an octopus where there are tentacles reaching into various other parts of the city. It really is what we call a little bit of a red flag. And then there's a California prohibition where we shall not adopt election district boundaries for the purpose of favoring or discriminating against an incumbent, political candidate, or political party. Now, I mentioned that we use the last census, which was in 2020, and yes, we will likely do this again in 2031 after the 2030 census comes out for what we call redistricting, because it's likely that the city will grow. And we look at equal population of the districts of the residents, not necessarily just registered voters. These are the residents of the city of Clovis. And we draw these districts by using census blocks. And so you're going to see on some maps some really interesting boundaries perhaps or shapes of districts because we have to use census blocks. And census blocks I like to use are like snowflakes. There really are no two alike, but there are. But a census block could be square, rectangular, have curves in it, et cetera, and then the population varies by each census block. So that'll give you an idea. And also on the website, one can find the maps that are before council tonight and all the maps that have been submitted for this process. Now, on the back side of the map, of each map will be a table that represents the demographics for each proposed plan or map. So when I talked about a certain number of demographics on a particular plan before council, that's what I'm referring to. And again, it's all based on primarily the 2020 census. So we have before you 4 maps, actually just 3. The one that's grayed out, map 505, is what we call a map that is not viable, meaning that it did not meet the rules required to be considered by council. You'll see it goes from 503 to 505. Well, because we had a map 504 at our last public hearing, which also was not viable, so it cannot be considered. But we wanted to make sure that we acknowledge the individual that submitted map 505. It's just missing, a criteria to be moved forward as what we call a viable map. So we're going to review 3 maps tonight. Council has already gone through these maps, and I have made that highway correction that I so embarrassingly was notified back last meeting. So 501, the goal was to create 5 compact districts of similar design. District 1, the pink area up in the northwest section of, it encompasses the northwest portion of the city with Highway 168, its southern border. District 2, which would be the light blue area to the right of District 1, it encompasses the northeast portion of the city, crossing Highway 168 and covering a large section beneath 168 with southern borders of Sierra and Bullard Avenues. District 3, the green shaded district, it is below 168 at Sierra, then drops to Bullard at Sunnyside, with an eastern border at Temperance and southern border at Shaw. This encompasses Old Town. District 4, which is kind of the purple, it's in the southeastern section on this particular map. It covers, as I said, the southeastern section with Bullard and Temperance as its borders. District 5, proposed District 5 that is the tan area. It is south of Shaw and borders District 4 at Temperance, covering the southwest portion of the city. When we're looking at the demographics, and you'll hear me say citizen voting age population, that refers to individuals, residents, who are citizens and they are of voting age, meaning they are 18 or older and they're citizens. They may be registered to vote, they may not be. So when we're looking at that, the breakdown in District 3, we have 30% Latino citizen voting age population and then 61% non-Hispanic white. In District 4, the purple area, we have 28% Latino, we call it CVAP or citizen voting age population, 49% non-Hispanic white, and 18% Asian. In District 5, it has a 38% Latino citizen voting age population and then 45% non-Hispanic white. This particular map has a variance of 7.11%. So it's a little bit of ways from zero, which like I mentioned earlier, is a little bit difficult to attain. Then we shift into map 502. And again, these numbers and colors can be changed as we go through this process. The pink area does not always have to be, District 1. It can change. So the key features on this one is this particular plan is compact. It follows major roads and I'll say, the dry creek bed, and minimizes neighborhood splits and follows, the trustee areas from, the school district as much as possible. The Northeast, District 1, which again is pink, bordered by Sunnyside, Toll House, Fowler, and Bullard. The Northwest District 2, the blue area, is bordered by Sunnyside, Sierra, and the Dry Creek. Am I saying that correctly instead of the river? Good.
We're just gonna make fun of you either way, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, okay. Southwest, District 3 is bordered by the what do we say we're gonna call it? The creek bed, river? Dry Creek, okay, there we go, and Clovis Avenue. South Central, District 5, the 10 area is, bordered by Clovis Avenue, Sierra, Sunnyside, Toll House, Fowler, and Bullard. Southeast, District 4 is bordered by Temperance and, Bullard. Now this one has a variance of equal population variance of 5.92%. When we're looking at the demographics, District 3 has 40% Latino, citizen voting age population, and 46% non-Hispanic, white. District 4 is 28% Latino, 49% non-Hispanic white, and 18% Asian. District 5 is 29% Latino and 58% white. So then we shift to Plan 503. So the key features here, it's compact, it follows major roads, the freeway, the Dry Creek, that minimizes neighborhood splits, and follows trustee area defined voting communities as much as possible as well. District 1 is nearly identical to the city portion of Trustee Area 4. Again, Trustee Area 4 of Clovis Unified School District. District 2, the northwest area in the blue, is nearly identical to the city portion of Trustee Area 3, plus the cross freeway portion of Trustee Area 5. Southwest District 3 is similar to the city portion of Trustee Area 6, plus the southwest city corner that is not in the school district. District 4 follows the city portion of Trustee Area 7, plus some other pieces for population balancing. District 5, the tan right in the center there, the central, is very similar to Trustee Area 5, but does not cross the freeway and does not extend quite as far east due to the population limit. So that has a population variance of 5.41. With respect to some of the demographics, District 3 is 40% Latino citizen voting age population and 45% non-Hispanic white. District 4, the purple area, is 27% Latino citizen voting age population and 51% non-Hispanic white and 17% Asian citizen voting age population. So that is 503. And again, thanks again to the community member that submitted both plans 504 and 505. 505 was not compact and it was not contiguous, meaning it was broken up. So part of this process as well is that council must decide on a sequencing. And so at this point, the recommendation is 3 election seats to be voted in 2026 and 2 in 2028. The numbers are on the screen per plan that's been proposed. At this point, we'll take comments from council. If you want to open up the public hearing first with respect to community comments. The task tonight is I come back next month with essentially the same thing with these 3 plus any public maps that have been submitted. Or you can leave here tonight with some A or 2 focus maps moving into the next meeting. It's surely council's prerogative to do whatever it wants with respect to this process and moving toward the May public hearing, excuse me, the March public hearing, March 4th. So with that, yield back to Mayor.
Okay. Are there any questions from the council at this time with our demographer? Okay, we'll go ahead and open the public portion now. If anyone is here to speak on this districting, you may address any questions you have, any ideas or thoughts you have.
Hi,
There you go.
I'm Stephen Trevino. I live on Bullard. First of all, I'd like to complain. Maybe you put the maps out there before I arrived, but I wish you would have put some of these maps out there so we could see. I have seen them online, but I don't remember completely how they look. But one thing that I noticed when I saw them is where I live on Bullard, I live on across from the pond basin. It looks like the Stafford addition is being included with Hardin Ranch, and I don't agree with that. I think that the Stafford addition should be included with OTA. And the reason is, and I apologize to you guys, but our neighborhood has not been well represented by the city. It has not. And if we do that and put us with a Hardin Ranch, it's going to be, I think it's going to be worse. That's my opinion. Anyways.
Thank you, Mr. Trevino. Yes, looking at it, Sunnyside Boulevard, it is in the, for the first map, you are right.
Is it all the maps, sir?
In the first map, I see that on the.
That's 1663 Bullard. I live on the north side of Bullard, and there's a pond basin. As far as I could see.
502 is not, huh?
Yeah, Mayor, looking at this, if to Mr. Trevino's point, it would appear in 502 that Bullard and Fowler is in 5 and is not part of the northern area. And I take a look at 503. Let's take
I apologize.
No. You're right. You're right on 501. 501 does put you in a northeast corridor, and 503.
2 and 3 does not.
Yeah, 2 and 3 do not.
Okay.
Yeah. So one of the maps, it does divide you like that. That is correct.
Okay.
And I like your idea with regards to having just paper
Yeah, I wish
maps
they would have them out
outside.
there so we can look at them. You know, I mean, I did look at them online, and like I said, I didn't remember all this stuff.
I agree with most everything you say, Mr. Trevino, every time. But I think paper maps that are in color, because this is not a useful map to me. It's all the same color. I can't distinguish except looking at it here. So I think if we could have paper maps in color of these districts, it would be helpful for people to be able to see them.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Trevino. Anyone else like to address the council on this item, on districting? Okay. Brianna, do we have anything online? Okay, no comments online as well. Okay, we'll go ahead and close the public portion. We just want to state to the public, please submit yours, look at these that we have, and you can probably just move some of the lines a little bit to include your neighborhood in a certain area, move another. And I think, Dr. Tilton, when they do it, does it tell you if it complies or not right away?
Yeah, with we call Dave's redistricting app, the online tool, it will. It'll create the tally for you as you're going through it. The paper map does not.
So they can keep moving it until it complies and then submit the one that complies.
Right.
Yeah, so please, have your groups, your neighbors, please submit those. The more we have, and then even if you don't submit, please comment on the ones that are before us, if you're not going to give any. With regards to 501, 502, 503, those are the 3 that are currently in front of us, and give your opinions on those. That will really help us, those online. And I think for Chad, your team, if these are the 3, if we can really reach out for this last hearing to see what people give us feedback, if not on these 3, then new maps that we can see as well, that will be helpful. Any other questions? There is a written comment? Okay. No, for the record, there is a written comment on districting, so I wanted to submit that for the record. Okay. Anyone else? Oh, anyone else on here in the council? Are we seeing things that, I think, comments?
The only comment, that I would say is I'm drawn to the maps that divide us this way because this way seems so harsh. like everyone that lives south of Shaw is something, or everything that lives south of another street is something, and I don't think that's quite right. So I was an advocate for things that have different kinds of neighborhoods. I hear Mr. Trevino, I think representation is super important, and I think there's value in having districts that are different. So, I recognize 502, I think, I can't tell on my gray map, but I think it was the one that divided, Old Town. That may not be quite right, so that might need an adjustment, but just as an observation, I'm drawn to the maps that are this way and not this way. I think that's the way the world is different going up and down than it is going across. So that would be my only comment tonight.
Okay, please, go ahead, because I think we need the public's input on this as much as possible. Your name again?
I'm Jenny Kren, and, I live on Bullard Avenue. Where's Steve go? Also, just a distance away. There are statistics, you said there are statistics on the back of the maps, but the only statistical breakdown that I saw in the packet was for 501, and didn't show it for not 501, 505, the one that didn't qualify. I didn't see it for the other three, and I was wondering if that is available.
Dr. Tilton or Brianna, yeah.
Sorry, yes, it is available. It is available on our website, under the district's website, as well as, the public packet for January 21st, but I can print it out for you as well.
Oh, January 21st.
Yes.
When it was first submitted, all the data was given with it because it qualified, Jenny. Yeah. Okay. I think something to consider, or what I'm struggling with or debating is it better, I like 501 and 502, but is it better to have Old Town with one council member, or it may be wiser to have it with two? So that way both share in that. And so I'm torn with that, because if it's one, we see how Fresno, where it's only one council member, makes it where it's very difficult to get help to that district. But then maybe now if it's two, it will always keep it at the forefront. So that I haven't decided, but I am torn on that. And I think feedback from our citizens will be helpful as well as we work through these issues as we look at the maps. And if any of us, I think we can kind of move the maps around ourselves and see how it plays out. Yes, this is close that we want to get as much as possible.
How do you define Old Town? Are you talking about Sunnyside, all the way to perhaps Minnewawa, Sierra, all the way to, perhaps 8th Street or something like that, or?
There's an official definition on paper, but then all Old Town, meaning that district, the main part of it, the middle part of it, 502 actually goes up Clovis Avenue. So no matter how we define it, it's going to divide Old Town. So for 502. So,
Okay.
but, and then it includes you in that district with Clovis Avenue, or it goes all the way to Clovis Avenue. And so that, the other one doesn't. The other one puts it all as one.
Why, I'm sorry, why would you want someone to represent the whole Old Town?
It's just a question. I don't want,
I mean, I don't mean you.
Okay.
I mean, maybe the city council, why would anyone want it to be all one? Because
that's a good question.
I mean, because, I know that, there's a lot of things that go on in downtown Clovis. And if we have two different representatives, representing, they might get an argument, say, no, we don't want this. And the other part might say, yes, we want this. It's been going on for 100 years,
Yeah.
you know, like the Monday meetings. But
See, Lynn, another comment you love about Mr. Trevino. Thank you. You had a question?
I guess to Mr. Trevino's point, if it's Old Town town was split on Clovis Avenue, you'd have one council member would have old hat days and the other one would have rodeo. So I get that.
Right.
Looking at several of these, and there was a public comment about Southwest Clovis, and I wasn't real clear on what the person meant. I think looking at number 502 pushes the Southwest area almost all the way to Sierra, and I kind of like having the crossover of neighborhoods, apartments, single family, the Shaw corridor for commercial, and Old Town. I think that's a really good mix for that area. And then the other ones seem to be contiguous and serving, not breaking up any neighborhoods, but that's just my observation from 10,000 feet.
I think you're right, though, because the comment on public comment is her comment was it reinforces the south of Shaw bias. And I think that's what I was trying to say. When you do it this way, that's going to just hold on, that I live south of Shaw. I actually live south of Shaw, but that does have a bias with it that I don't live in Harlan Ranch, for example. So I think that was her point, and I think she's right on that.
Okay. Any other comments or direction? Okay, seeing none, we will go ahead and close this item. It is a receive and file, and so the next meeting will be where we actually choose a map, correct? Oh, no, final decision on map direction.
Oh. Yeah, you'll select a map and then, proceed with the first reading of the ordinance.
Okay, so the next meeting is very important in that sense. And then the 11th is when we actually make the final.
Your second reading.
Yeah, second reading,
And
it's final.
that could be consent, I guess, or it's
Yeah.
up to however you agendize typically.
Yeah, the March 4th meeting will be the map selection and ordinance introduction, and then the confirmation vote would be the next meeting.
Okay, and if you have maps to submit, the deadline is February 21st at 5 p.m. for that March 4th meeting. So to our citizens and to our staff, please. Yeah, so staff, if we can reach out, do another blitz somehow to get as much input as possible, since we're sort of down to 3 maps. So, okay, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Silva. Okay, at this time, we'll go back to public comments. We had one already, and so I want to note for the record, we have 2 other written ones as well, one from Rachel Udeman and then one from Amalia Bernardo. So, go ahead. Yes, it's on.
All right. Good evening, council members and mayor. My name is Kendra Myers-Devedjian. I was born and raised in Clovis. Actually, my father's family moved here in the 40s. Our matriarch, my grandmother, who has passed, one of the things she loved most about Clovis was its diversity. She was a woman of God. She raised us to love the Bible and the Word of Jesus, and so what she taught us is we love everybody. She was the woman that took care of everybody's kids on the street. They were the poor Okies that came and worked the fields here back in the day. They lived out on Sierra and McKelvey. The old house is still there, and when we moved my grandma over to Keats, I now live back on my neighborhood street. The best thing about my street is the diversity. It's my neighbors next door to me from Mexico. It's the people across the street next door to my parents who are from Croatia. And it's our favorite neighbors down the street that are refugees from Laos. That's what makes my Clovis neighborhood super awesome. So I was really bummed out to see my city in the news for not so awesome reasons, because the Clovis I know and love doesn't spew hate. So I just hope as you continue about your business over the next weeks and months that you take heart in knowing that there are so many of us in Clovis that love being here because of the diversity, because we are grounded in our faith that tells us that we love everybody regardless of what border they were born on. Thank you.
Thank you, Kendra. Anyone else like to address the council? Go ahead. Yep, you're next.
Hi, all. My name is Joshua Engel. I live off Ashland in Maywawa. And if I'm at all honest, the current proposals recently about the non-sanctuary status that's been brought up in, the news and here in City Council, I understand the interest and zeal regarding it, but it feels like a distraction from things that really do matter more on a day-to-day for city citizens of the city. For me and my mom, for example, a big thing for us right now is the budget. And, our water bill has been skyrocketing, recently. If we were, not to say Fresno is better on a variety of things, but if we were on their municipal water, for example, our water budget would be significantly lower. And we'd be able to, as a result, manage our, finances a little better. And it's, wondering why that's occurring for our city, why our water bill has gone up, why other aspects have gone up in price. We've got these bonds, taxes that we've, every 2 years have added on, and yet it seems like there's always an issue in this regard, and this feels like a distraction from those aspects that matter more in the day-to-day life of citizens. And this would just add on yet another on top of that. I don't want to have our police resources taken to have to manage something that really is a Fed job. So, anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you, Joshua. Anyone else?
Hello, my name is Steve Trevino. I live on Border. I don't know if if anyone really cares, but my father was in World War II, and he was from South Texas. He was born maybe 10 miles from the Mexican border, and they were very poor. My father and his brothers, very poor people. And World War II came along, and my dad, along with his brother, went to World War II, and they came back. To the United States, and they ended up working the fields. One of my uncles ended up working in Iran, and my dad and my mom were coming back and forth between Texas and California working the crops. And there in the early 50s, 1953, President Eisenhower, started a program, Operation Wetback. And that was one of the reasons why my parents came to California, to get away from all that. Because in Texas, it was really bad. They still had the Jim Crow laws, where Mexicans couldn't use certain restrooms, and they had restaurants for white people and restaurants for blacks and Mexicans. So it was pretty bad. My parents came to California, and my dad used to work. I've told you 100 times here on Minnewawa, in all these pitch fields. And I remember my dad telling me all these stories about the Border Patrol coming and raiding all the fields. And I had an uncle, he was a town drunk. He used to walk down Fifth Street, all the way to the 500 Club and the Cowtown and all the rest of those bars. Well, one day he was working out in the fields, and they wanted to deport him. He didn't have no education. During that time, people didn't carry IDs. So they came to my house and grabbed his stuff, and my mom told me, hey, he's an American, Same with my uncle who lived in Huron. He was a veteran, and they made him come all the way to Fresno to prove he was an American citizen. And you know what's ironic? Before I came last week, I went and got my U.S. passport card to put in my wallet in case I got stopped by the police. And it was kind of weird, I come in here, and people calling Mexicans invaders and criminals and rapists, and I don't know what other words they used, and I didn't know what to think. So I'm not illegal. I was born here, but still, I look Latino. I got a baseball cap here. It says Puro Clovis, So, anyways, it's just ironic that I came over here. I didn't know anything about it. I'm sorry, I dropped you guys out of here. But anyways, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Trevino.
Those are beautiful comments.
Hello, I am a longtime resident of the city of Clovis, and I actually support becoming an anti-sanctuary city. And before I receive all kinds of hate, I would just like to preface this by saying there are literally over 100 different countries, representatives from different countries or citizens of different countries coming here illegally. So I think the news puts out a narrative that's just focusing on one thing, and that's not representative of what we are talking about here. California is a diverse state, and we love the fact that California is a diverse state, but all we're asking for is that people come here. There's a legal process. Come here legally. I would register voters every single month at Valdez Hall, and there was literally 1,000 different residents or 1,000 different immigrants getting their citizenships here legally in Fresno County down at Valdez Hall. People from every different country imaginable, and that's all we're asking for. Our country, or our state spends, you were talking about, how you're hurting here financially. Our state spends $9.5 billion on medical care for illegal immigrants. This state is in a deficit, and we cannot continue on this pathward. So all we're asking is that there's a process, please come here legally. And we support people of all nations, but there's a process. Thank you.
Thank you, Molly. And whoever wants to speak, you can go ahead and start queuing up if there are more of you, so that way you can just go straight up right after the speaker.
So little, I can barely
It's fine. You can move the microphone. You can move the mic down. Yep, that works.
Anyways, my name's Sarah Mallman, and I too have been a resident of Clovis my whole life. I don't support becoming an unsanctuary city. I'm an American. I have an American daughter, but my daughter's half Hispanic, and she goes to Clovis schools. And I've already gotten a letter from Clovis schools saying they don't keep track of their social security numbers or any of their information. So even though I'm totally American with an American child, I have to warn my child about going to school now and being prepared to prove her identity and prove her, her nationality. And now to think that I'd have to worry about the police too, coming onto her school. I mean, those are things that me as an American now have to worry about. And we are in a deficit, so I don't think we should be having our police do the federal, ICE's job. So I don't support that. Thanks.
Thank you, Sarah.
Hi, it's me again. I'm Jenny Kren from Bullard Avenue, and I am speaking against the non-sanctuary city effort or whatever it is at this point. I mean, it's not a formal resolution, but the idea of the state law is that immigration is a federal responsibility. It's in the Constitution. It's a federal purpose and responsibility, and it is not the role of the state to do enforcement. There are things like the records at the jail are available to the Border Patrol and ICE. They can look them up, themselves. But it's not a state responsibility, and so that's all that it means, really, here in California as a sanctuary state. In the interest of time, I just would like to introduce. I have some people here who are here with me. And if you would just kind of raise your hands, and so we won't all go up and speak. So now the back row back there, Angelica. So there's quite a few of us, and I'm going to just let you know so we don't all have to get up and speak. But if you want to speak, Angelica, go ahead.
Thank you, Jenny.
name is Angelica Rios, and I am a resident of Clovis. And I didn't realize that I am a South Shaw. I didn't realize that was a thing, but I just figured it out as a thing. I didn't know. I'm South Shaw. I live by Clovis East. I am a school social worker with Fresno Unified School District, and I have seen the impact this has brought to our students. We here at Clovis Unified have 40% Hispanic population. This provides subgroups when you start dividing and saying certain people will go on campus looking for certain students that look a certain way. We're not understanding what the impact is on these children. I'm not sure what we're trying to do here, and I don't know what the crime rate is for Hispanics that are not documented. If it's out of control, that we need to put ourselves in the news to say we want to be a non-sanctuary city. For what purpose? What are we trying to resolve? My husband's a police officer for Fresno Police Department. He's been a police officer for 23 years. And I don't think he says that the police do not support this. So have you guys even spoken to the police officers in the city of Clovis and asking them, how are they going to carry this out? Is this something that they can possibly do? What that will look like? Or are we just throwing things out there to see what will stick? Because that's what I think is happening here. And I don't know that because I have kids at Clovis Unified. Do I have to tell my kids now, be careful, because someone might go on campus looking for you, here's your passport, carry a copy of it in your backpack? I just don't know what we're trying to accomplish here by indicating that we want to be a non-sanctuary city. What are we putting in the minds of our students, our children? I know that my kids look Hispanic, just like I do. And they're the ones that are going to be asked where they're from. And I don't think that's fair to any child, no matter what they look like, where they're from. And that's where I'm coming from the children, the kids in our school, because I interface with them all the time. And I don't know that you guys are considering that or even thinking about what impact that'll be, even with saying we are a non-sanctuary city, what that does for them, to them, mentally and emotionally. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Angelica. Anyone else here to address the council? Okay.
My name is Al Gutierrez. I'm new to the city, only been here 8 years, and I love Clovis. I've come from East Los Angeles, and it has nothing to compare with what we have here. And I sympathize with a lot of the statements that I heard about the money impact of what the illegal aliens might present to us. And I struggle with a lot of questions lately. But it boiled down to this, because I've followed some of the proceedings of this council and some of the topics that they've struggled with. And I had a hard time with the prospect of banning certain books in the library. But in this case, I had to look at my wallet and the idea of banning humanity, and I can't deal with that. The idea that people that have my last name or people that might look like my grandchildren would have to worry about being deported, which certainly is not going to happen because they're all citizens. But the idea that they fear it for their friends, we fear it for their nannies, that does not sit well with me. And I, in good conscience, cannot support the idea that we would be a non-sanctuary city. Thank you.
Thank you, Al. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, we're going to go ahead and close the public portion, the public hearing, comments portion. Now we're going to move to the consent calendar. Consent items are routine in nature, are placed on the consent calendar, and is a recommended action for the City Council. They will be considered and voted upon in one vote as one item unless a council member requests individual consideration. Are there any items that any council member would like to pull? Okay, I would like to pull item 9, which is the bus shelters. And so that's the one. Any others? Okay, Sina, anyone here the council from the public, to speak on items 2 through 11? Okay, seeing them, we'll close the public portion. Back to the council.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar items number 2 through 8 and 10 and 11, polling item number 9.
Okay, do we have a second? Second. Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay, and, on this one, Amy, I don't need a report, but I just wanted to commend just the wonderful work that our transit team has been working and the positive comments. And so I wanted to pull it just to highlight it more than anything, that the new routes and the color system has been received so well. The students that I see and I ask, and they love it, and even the residents, just how simple it is and where it's going. And now they're going to get benches. 54, right? 53, 54 benches, and they're going to be along those routes. And I know that it wasn't in the report. That's why I asked for it to be provided to the council. Is how beautiful the benches are too, because some of those benches are not the best. But now we're going to get new great benches, and so I wanted to just highlight that and commend you both, Amy and. I apologize, I forgot your name.
Bethany.
Bethany, okay. And so that's what I wanted. Anything you wanted to add as well? Any other comments from our council? I know you were nervous, but there was nothing.
It's okay.
He read page 14, paragraph 3, item number 6, and he wanted to ask about no.
You just did to her what you did to me so many years ago, so thank you. Bethany's new in her position as Deputy General Services Director, and thank you for your kind words. I want to let you know those transit routes, we began that project in 2019 and were completely derailed by the pandemic. And we're just so pleased that we're back on track. We started construction. We're able to purchase the capital improvements for them, and we just can't wait to unveil them at the end of this year. It is a complete overhaul of our system, and we're really excited for our community to get on board and see what we have in store for them. So thank you for your kind words, and you gave her a mild heart attack tonight, so thank you.
It's part of your hazing.
Yeah, I know.
You passed.
Thank you.
You're new, so we have to pull it. Go ahead.
And to kind of jump in on what Bong said, the connectivity to Clovis Community College that we've been able to generate, especially for folks who live in a struggling neighborhood who maybe don't have a car, or a high school kid who wants to go part-time part of their senior year and take classes at Clovis Community, now they're going to be able to do that, because education is the way out of difficulties. So now we've been able to connect with them and with our friends at FACTS. It opens up the world, or at least our local world.
You're correct about that, and she won't toot her own horn, but I will. That Bethany set a very high standard in the middle of this project, that we wanted to provide 45-minute service anywhere in the city with just one transfer. That, coupled with zero fare model, really puts us in the front for service. And like I said, we're really excited to get our community on board and have them try transit.
I was going to add in for my friend from COG, Mr. Phipps, what I always say is transportation has nothing to do with roads and everything to do with people. So, I think getting people to where they need to go in some reasonable amount of time, and I think the standards that we provide are standards we ourselves would also take advantage of. And I think when we say, oh yes, you can ride the bus from Calinga to downtown Fresno, it takes you 3.5 hours, is that a problem? The answer is yeah, it's a huge problem. So, I'll echo Dwight Kroll must be talking about me. Vaughn's comments about getting people where they need to go in short amount of time, because it is not about the transit or the road or the bus, it's about the people. And so, good job, team, good job.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. And I wanted to say that when I took the tour, when I actually rode the roundup and the stage line, it showed the quality of our drivers and how you cared for those who are riding a wheelchair, and they all knew them. And they address our drivers by name. And I will say this for the record, we actually go to Fresno and take them to their place of destination in Fresno, though some may take that as some other interpretation, but really it's care and door-to-door service. And so that's what our transit team does, because they're going to the veterans, you know, they're going to wherever in Fresno. We take them all the way there. And so that's something that you don't find, or you hardly find, in any other city. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the public portion. Does anyone speak on this? Yes, Mr. Trevino. Yep.
Recently, I was going to the drugstore on the corner of Sunnyside and Herndon, and as I walked up to the front, there was one of the small buses, the city of Clovis there, and I just kind of looked a little bit. I was going in the front door, and there was a woman, elderly lady. I think she was in a wheelchair, and the bus driver walks out, and he goes, "Mrs. So-and-so," I remember, "are you okay?" And I thought to myself, is this guy a nurse or is he a bus driver? But he goes, "Hey, are you okay? Is there something going on?" You know, and he was there, and I went inside the drugstore and I came back and he was still out there, you know, talking to the lady, and I guess he was trying to get her into the bus. But I thought that was really neat. Yeah. You know, that's remarkable. I mean, I don't know the word, just, you know, super, you know?
Yeah.
So I just thought I'd bring that to your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Trevino. Yeah. And I'm sure there are many more stories like that we don't hear about that our staff are doing out there in the community. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, we'll bring it back to the council.
I'll move for approval or acceptance of this consent item, number 9.
Second.
Okay, motion second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And if the council would agree, I would like to move item 15, because I think there's a change in what we need to do, up to be the first administrative item to hear, so that way Mr. Phipps can leave. This is the Measure C item, so is that okay with the rest of the council?
You beat me to, I was gonna suggest that we move item 14 up, because we have all these folks in their yellow vests are having work in the morning.
Okay.
And I'm gonna be proposing a continuance for that, because I think it needs to be heard by full council, but I defer to whatever you wanna do, sir.
Okay, so we can do 15 and then 14, and then from there we'll go to 12. Just rearrangement of the agenda. Everybody okay up here? Okay. All right, so with that, we'll move to item 15, and I'll just read it for the council, for the record. Council, this is consider approval of council appointment to the Measure C Sales Tax Renewal Committee, and staff on this is our city manager, Andy Hausler.
Thank you, Mayor. The Fresno Council of Governments and the Fresno County Transportation Authority are forming the Measure C Sales Tax Renewal Committee. There have been some changes since the staff report was printed that Mr. Phipps from the Fresno Council of Governments would like to speak to. I'd like to turn it over to him at this point.
Okay. Mr. Phipps?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Hausler and Mr. Mayor and members of the council. We have a slide to present that proposes kind of the structure of the committee, and the message tonight is that there is no need to act at this time. There is no need for any kind of formal council action at this time. In conversations with the consulting firm that we've brought on board, the direction that the Measure C committee has taken has been moving more toward a kind of a citizens-based approach for the renewal committee or the steering committee, and having a part of that committee, a technical subcommittee made up of your jurisdictional staff as kind of a separate entity to feed and advise that renewal committee. So you see that reflected here on the screen. This is how it's now coming together. We did discuss this generally with each of your city councils and with some of you individually about how we thought this might come together. It has gained clarity since we've been able to bring the consultant on board and have some conversations. Prior to that, we were, taking our best guess at how the 2026 Measure C renewal effort would come together. So what you see here is a variety of committees that are already established, including, it's not on there, but I can add it, the Measure C Oversight Committee, and then at the Fresno Council of Governments, we have our Regional Transportation Plan Roundtable, our Social Services Transportation Advisory Committee, which is primarily made up of transit interests, our Environmental Justice Subcommittee, our Active Transportation Program Committee, and our Safe Routes to Schools Committee, all feeding information upward toward the Technical Committee and the Measure C Renewal Committee, and then from there going up to the Fresno COG main committees, the Transportation Technical Committee and the Policy Advisory Committee, which then feeds it up forward to the Policy Board, the Fresno County Transportation Authority Board, and then with the expenditure plan being formed along the way, and that expenditure plan then going to the each of the 15 city councils and finally to the Board of Supervisors. And you see public input, the opportunities for public input are myriad and thorough throughout the process. Simultaneously with, as the Renewal Committee is coming together on this and discussing their thoughts as to how the expenditure plan should be developed and the pie should be divided, if you will, we will be simultaneously out having public workshops and a variety of different public input opportunities, focus groups. There will be social media postings. There will be billboards, radio ads that invite public input into this process. All of that fed into the Renewal Committee, beginning with the Renewal Committee, and then up the chain. There would be a feedback loop so that if there are concerns, you know, the Fresno COG and FCTA staff, along with the consultant, would be bringing that back down from the elected officials back down to the Renewal Committee. Hey, there's some concern about this, just so you know, and you know, and the cycle continues. And so that is kind of the visioning that we have for this. We anticipate that the committee will begin its meetings in probably sometime late March, early April. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions for Mr. Phipps?
Thanks, Robert. As we spoke today about this, I think the one thing is if there's a way just to make sure that you're still taking applications or interest forms or whatever the word is for the steering committee, but I think the date says it's closed. So if you can maybe update that on the website so you can still gather names and then the
because we are still
team
soliciting.
can look.
Yes, we are. We did not receive. We anticipated that we would have the applications by now, but we are still soliciting. So we will do that.
So if there's anyone in the audience from the city of Clovis or anybody listening or anybody that we know that would be interested and available to serve as a resident view on Measure C, but if you could update that website, that would be great.
Will do.
Thank you so much.
And Robert, with regards to our appointment representing the city, then you are wanting, meaning the facilitator is wanting a community member, because the staff will go into that Technical Advisory Committee. Right. And so we will be in the COG already as elected, so we are wanting, so to the public, if you are interested to represent us, please contact our city manager, and then to the rest of the council as well, if there are people you would like to recommend, I think that's in order so that we can see who we want to send to represent us to this committee. It's an important committee. Provides for transit, also for a lot of our roads projects, bikes, and so it's very important. We have one more shot at this, and so I think we want to be at the table and make sure Measure C gets passed again so we can continue to do the projects.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor. And all, you know, if you have an interest in specifically in transportation, but broadly, you know, covering all modes, that's kind of what we're looking for, and willing to consider multiple points of view.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Phipps? Okay, at this time, I'm going to open the public portion. If you are here to address this item for Measure C, you can address any questions. Okay, seeing none, we'll close that. And Andy, are we just continuing to a date uncertain? Are we just continuing? It's fine, or do we need a motion? We don't need action. Scott, do we need a motion? We don't need anything, right? Because there's.
Yeah, you're not considering, I think, you're not going to take action tonight on the recommended approval. No. Yeah, so it doesn't need to be continued to a date certain. There's no public noticing required. It can just be brought back at some point.
for
Okay.
future discussion.
Just a point of clarification, will it ever come back? We're not gonna do the appointing.
Well, I understand that we will, or Robert, you prefer us to make a council recommendation with our technical person and the citizen that we will submit
That
to
is,
both committees.
that is certainly your prerogative, but we do not necessarily see it as being that formal a process.
Okay.
It does not have to be.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no requirement for that. The consultant will be contacting you, will be contacting Mr. Hausler, and some of you individually or contacting the council members, the mayor, to get your perspective on who, what's important, who would be good candidates, and then we'll be soliciting those individuals.
I'm a huge advocate of, we should generate good applicants or candidates. We should let the facilitator put their team together and get this project done. And I would strongly suggest that we just remove this from any future, there's no action right now for us to do. And getting councils involved in picking, well, I thought it should be you, and I thought it should be you, and it's too much. So I'd let this process go the way it is and encourage our citizens to apply and let, the facilitator choose. And so I would recommend that we just withdraw this item forever and ever until we meet again. Amen. I don't know, but that's what I would say. I don't think we need to continue.
I agree. I think that we would slow the process down. I think that there's probably some good citizens, and maybe our mass transit people can suggest somebody who is a frequent flyer who might be interested, but I think we would slow it down.
All right, so that seems to be the consensus. So, Andy,
We are good.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Fitzgerald. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and move backwards to item 14, and I'll read that for the record. This is consider approval, award recycling and organic material collection, processing, and marketing services agreement to Mid-Valley Disposal, and authorize the city manager to execute the agreement on behalf of the city. This was continued from our February 4th meeting. Glenn Estes is here, and so is Scott.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We do have a short presentation if you want us to go through that.
Okay. Mayor?
Yes.
The reason that I wanted to move this up is because Councilmember Baskel isn't here because of an exigent matter. This is an important item, I think, that needs to be considered by a 5-member council. And to bring it up again and then continue, we're not doing anybody any favors, and we're certainly keeping people from their bedtime, because I'm assuming you guys are getting up at 4 in the morning. So I would ask the council to entertain continuing this to, I'll have to defer to staff on which date, when we have a full council, so that we can ask the proper questions and be prepared to have a robust debate about it.
Okay. Scott, we take that as a motion right away and then take open comment on that motion?
You can if you wish, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Drew, is that a motion? I just want to.
That would be a motion.
Okay. Do we have a? Just.
Did you have a date, or you're looking for direction on the
I'm
date?
looking for direction from staff on
February 18th would be ideal.
February
That would be
18th.
next Tuesday.
I think that's a reasonable, and it's a Tuesday, Lynn.
Okay. We do have a motion. Is there a
Comment.
second?
I love you, but no comment.
Okay. No second?
I'll second it.
Second? Okay.
Oh, sorry.
So we'll open discussion and also open the public before we vote. And so I also want to give the applicants a chance to respond to that continuance, so that way we can hear. So, anyone from the public would like to speak on this item with regards to the continuance?
Looks like Republic's good, Cagway's good.
Okay.
Mid Valley, okay?
All right. Seeing none, we're going to go ahead and close. And so the motion before us is to continue this item to February 18th. All those in favor
Wait,
say...
I have a discussion item.
Yes,
Do you mind,
go
sorry?
ahead.
So, I'm not going to mention what I showed you the picture of, but I do have a favor to ask. So, I did appreciate, kind of, receiving the other two RFPs, the other two proposals. I'd love to have seen the RFP itself. I still haven't seen the RFP originally, so I'd love to get a copy of that, as long as it's not 700 pages.
We will send you it digitally.
No.
Along. Oh, you want?
Just kidding. But I do have a favor to ask. So I went through all 700 pages. And I'm going to make my own list of metrics that I think are important so I can understand what I'm trying to compare. But I need help with the read that I couldn't find. So could I tell you the three that I would love you to tell me the answers to? And then I'll type this up and I'll send it to you so you can see if I'm on the right track. So I'm looking at metrics like the total contract price. I found that. Total residential price, found that. I couldn't find, I know it's in there, but I couldn't find the number of trucks to service Clovis. So I want to know that in the proposal. I found the number of routes per week. I saw that. I'm interested in the RFP because is community investment a category or is it not a category? You said you didn't score it, but if it was a category, I'm a little confused about that. So I want to see the RFP language and if you had any points or consideration or how that factored in at all. The Republic folks, yeah, there you are. Your comments were very nice, and thank you for that, both of you. And you spoke about your customer service reliability number. I don't know if that was in your RFP or if you just said that out loud, but if there's a reliability or a customer service metric, I couldn't find that consistently across 700. Did I mention it was 700 pages? And then the last one was, I found the total cost of operation. I found the fuel cost, so I understood fuel cost. And then I couldn't find the cost per container. I found Mid-Valley's cost per container, and I couldn't find the Cagley and Republic. So I don't even know if those are relevant, but that is what my brain said. Let me look for those. So if you could just give me those three that I didn't get, it'd be great.
And when you say container, you mean toter?
Toter.
Okay.
That would be great. So that was just least, I don't know if that's right, wrong, or otherwise, but I had to sift through somehow, and that's what I was trying to get at. So I did most of the work. If you could just get me those last few, I would appreciate the metrics. Thank you.
Scott, I just had a question with regards to what we're doing. Does it violate any RFP when we start giving categories that were not scored, but now we will take into consideration? Because ultimately it's our decision, so we could have said, I don't care about any recommendation. The five of us are just going to pick A, B, C, whatever. Is that, am I accurate, or can we still do this? And how fair or unfair is it if, looking through the proposals, I don't see something because it wasn't in the RFP, and then now they may or may not get a chance to respond?
Yeah,
I just want to understand that.
I'm sorry, ultimately, you have the discretion, the council has the discretion. Staff makes a recommendation based on the RFP and their scoring categories, but we're not absolutely bound to those scoring categories. So, okay. I mean, again, I think in the past, I think typically that's what staff has done, and I don't know that council has gone into the depth of doing its own analysis, but that's not prohibited.
Okay.
And I'm not suggesting everything is in everybody's RFP. So I'm just trying to pull out data points in the categories, technical and reliability. I was trying to go by your categories, but these are the things that I was trying to land on that gave me some kind of thing I could hold on to. And like I said, they may not be relevant. I don't do trash for a living, but that would help me. So thanks.
Okay.
Thank you.
Scott, did you have?
No, we should be able to get that information.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments before we take a vote? Okay, all those in favor of continuing to February 18th, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Motion carries. Thank you very much for coming back. Okay. We'll see you next week. Okay, at this time, we'll move back to our workshop. It is a receive and file on landscape maintenance districts, and staff on this is Scott Redelfs, our Public Utilities Director.
Scott. Okay, hopefully I know how to use these buttons right on this clicker. Good evening again, Mayor and Council. Let me first start off by introducing Tim Brashears. If you haven't met him yet, you may have. He's our new Parks Manager. He's doing a great job. I brought him up for all the hard questions, so he's ready. So we're going to do a kind of an LMD 101 workshop tonight and try to go through what the LMD is, I'm going to show you this book. It's not 700 pages, but it's 400 and something. And we've tried to condense that into about 15 to 20 slides to get an impression of what the LMD is so that everybody has an understanding when we, on the next item, are asking for rate increases, you know exactly, or to a certain extent, what I'm talking about. I do want to add some background to this before I get into the workshop. Parks maintenance is basically funded, majority funded by the LMD and the general fund. Each one pays for a portion of the maintenance and operations we do for park services throughout the city. You'll find that the general fund, even though tonight it's not about the general fund, basically funds the larger parks, the community parks, and the trails in the throughout the city. If you get into the newer developments, the newer areas of the city, like Loma Vista, you'll find Pasatiempo Park and Village Green are actually going to be funded through the LMD. It's a different mechanism that we've put in place on future development. Also, the Paseos would be running through an LMD and be funded, the maintenance would be funded through that. So I just want to make sure as we go through this that there are two separate operations. The LMDs that comprises about 70% of the parks funding, and the general fund kicks in the other 30% of the general fund portions of the areas of the city, so that once we get into LMD, that there's hopefully no confusion there. Oh, this is great. Automatic slide, probably cue me to go quicker. Okay, so back in 1972, the Landscape and Lighting Act of 1972 was passed, and it was tailored in the Streets and Highways Code, section 22-500. Okay, with all that, what it did is back then, and even today, it's always searching for a revenue source to pay for maintenance and operations of something that the city takes on as a liability. So at that time, we formed a landscape maintenance district. There are also things called landscape and lighting maintenance districts. Unfortunately, we didn't include lighting at that time. So our district that we formed is only for landscaping. It does include Paseo lightings, bollards and bollard lighting and things like that, like through Loma Vista where you see that. But as far as the streets go and the major arterials and collectors, all the standard PG&E lighting is not funded through anything at this time except for government facilities and our highway users tax funds that we bring in. And we'll go over some other opportunities that the Assistant City Manager will be talking about in a few weeks or next month to fund those. So the LMD was formed, and so we took advantage of that, where property owners within a district are assessed fees to cover the cost of maintenance. And so as you find, every development comes in, council makes an action to add those properties upon acceptance to the LMD so that we can start charging the property owners in their property taxes funding to maintain the parks, the trails, and things like that, street side landscaping, medians within their benefit-driven area, or it's a benefit-driven assessment. History of, for the city of Clovis and how it relates is in 1978, Proposition 213 was, or Proposition 13 was passed, and it limited the property tax and changed how cities were able to fund the maintenance services. In 1985, our council, City of Clovis Council, passed a resolution to form Landscape Maintenance District number 1. And it wasn't until about, and between that and 1996, there was some areas that were incorporated into the District 1, but they were peeled out through a long council action into the action in 1996 when we formed basically zones 1 through 6 in the city. Zones 1 through 3 were street side and median landscaping zones, and these zones 4 through 6 were park zones. And I've got maps for all these. You're going to be wowed. But there's a lot of information to go through, and any questions along the way, please ask. In November of 1996, came along Proposition 218, and that basically stated you couldn't raise rates without property owner approval or a Prop 218 election. And in the case of landscape maintenance districts, it's a majority election, so we always have to get one over 50% of the amount of ballots that are returned, as opposed to a protest vote for our enterprise funds. So from 2000 and present, we've been implementing this LMD idea. It's throughout the city. It allows us, through the development of a property, that these tracts are formed. The assessment is tied to that. And the assessment includes a covenant, and the covenant has an ability to have a CPI in it plus a 2% escalator. So there's an automatic ability to increase it over time to match the services needed. And we basically come to council once a year when we bring the LMD, the engineer's report to you, and we review those assessments and say, are they healthy? Do we need to increase them? Do we need to leave them the same? And sometimes we even decrease them, and so we make those recommendations to you. That's through every zone outside of 1 through 6. 1 through 6 don't have automatic CPIs or escalators or anything like that. So those are the ones that we keep coming back to council and saying, okay, we're at the point where we need to raise rates and do an election because either our deficits are hitting or our fund balance is going negative.
Scott, a question. So the whole city is not in an LMD, correct? I live in a neighborhood that is not.
Yes.
So can you tell from the history, when this started, was it ever the vision that everybody would eventually be in an LMD? Or how, maybe you're going to get to that, but how is it that that isn't what occurred?
So I'm going to go into the maps.
Okay.
And maybe through the maps, you're going to be able to see that the vision the city had. Now, I would say most of the city is in an LMD. It's just whether people are actually, or folks are actually paying into that LMD because they weren't part of the original the makeup of that. We always talk about, like, you're not in Park Zone 5. You were on the border of the timeline where you missed that opportunity to participate. So you don't have to pay into the system, but Zone 5.
That's interesting. Okay.
Let's move to I think that gets into the maps. Nope. But we will get to the maps, and it'll kind of show you and kind of build a picture of how the LMD was formed and what it represents. So the assessments approved by LMD Covenant, that's for most of the new areas. That's tracks, new development, and people get added in nowadays if it's not through the development. If they come in for building permits and if they're doing improvements, they'll be required to be annexed into the LMD. Same thing with site plan reviews. The payment of each assessment or assessment of each parcel is made in the same manner as a property tax payment, so you will see that on your bill. Like if you're doing taxes now and you're looking at your property taxes, you will see an assessment for the LMD depending on which area you live in, or if you're not applicable to that LMD, you won't see it on your property taxes. So I would say, like Councilmember Ashbeck, you may be in Zone 2 on your taxes, but you're not seeing Zone 5 on your taxes because they overlap, and I'll go over those with the map. All funds collected through the assessment must be placed in a special fund. We call that the Landscape Maintenance District Fund. So we hold all these funds, and we basically account for them through the engineer's report, and we use those funds. Each LMD area pays for their own benefit zone, and we account for that, and I'll get into that. It's a huge amount of information, and it can only be, if in that area, generally, the money collected is used to support the expenditures in that area. And you can see that the different way we do this is, like a single-family residential is equivalent to one equivalent dwelling unit. If you get to commercial, you have 4 equivalent dwelling units. or even by acreage, they do that. So when we do the election in Zone 5, sometimes it hasn't passed. The apartment complexes bring in a lot more weighted votes, and generally will have if they vote against it, will have a very negative effect towards that being approved. Okay, so hopefully you can make heads or tails of these maps, and I'll start from the left to the right. The first map shows zones 1 through 3. So you can see the makeup of the zones, Councilmember Ashbeck. The light blue is zone number 3, kind of shows who's paying into it, and all the properties that are not colored are not paying into zone number 3. And you can go over right to the east of that, or to my right, which is the kind of peach colored. That is zone number 2. And you can see that when this was created, zone number 2 had actually a pretty big swath, but half of the properties are not paying into zone 2. Above that is the light green, that's zone number 1. Okay, and above that is the northwest zone, that's the new Heritage Grove zone. Now that is has the ability to raise rates through the covenants. It has an automatic CPI and escalator. The zones 1 through 3 always have to come back and ask council to conduct a Prop 218 election because there is no escalator, there's no automatic ability to adjust for inflation. If you go to the right, you have the magenta color, that's the Loma Vista zone, and that too has built-in escalators, CPIs, through the covenants, and automatically is able to keep up with the additional maintenance costs. Southeast zone is funded very well at this point in time, and it covers things like the Village Green, Pasatiempo Park, but all the street side and landscaping in that area, the paseos. And so that area will tend to be in a better kept condition as far as maintenance. Northwest is just coming out of the box, right? And so we're collecting good on that. It's tailored after the Loma Vista as far as making sure we are getting the necessary funding to maintain it at a level those residents expect. And that's a very beautiful area. And so we spare no expense to make sure that we're getting very good maintenance out in that area. I would put a caveat that we can't please everybody all the time, so we'll still get complaints, but it is in a much better condition than, say, like Zone 2, where we have funding issues.
Scott, can I ask a question quickly? Yeah. So zones 1, 2, and 3 have to go to Prop 218s every time.
Yes.
So is there something in that Prop 218 that precludes us from being able to include a CPI escalator?
No, and what we're going to be doing in the next item is addressing that we would like to see an escalator so that we can get out of doing this so if we go and we just talk about Zone 5, Park Zone 5, we've tried 3 times. Tried in 2016, 2023, and 2024, and it's failed each time. We've got a new way to go about it. I don't want to blow that surprise, but it does include the hope that if we get it through, it puts in a CPI. So we can have those things. Council in the past has chosen for staff to come back to council to ask for the increase so that the property owners have a vote. But it's up to council direction in where you want to take this. It's kind of counterintuitive with all the new LMDs that we don't have to come to council unless there's something outrageous that we have to account for and say, hey, we got to raise that beyond what the escalators and automatic CPIs allow.
So, yeah, so that would create a situation where basically standard increases of the cost of doing all of this stuff would be taken care of without having to go back with a Prop 218. But if something major came up, then we would still go through that process and the property owners would weigh in with the election.
Yeah. And what we have happening right now is through in zones 1 through 6, we see the deficit coming. In some zones, we see the balance of the fund in a deficit condition, and we go out and we say, okay, we need to raise it $20 So it'll last us 15 years or 10 years. And so we try to get it over, so we're at least collecting enough before we have to come right back, because we don't want to be coming to council. It costs, you'll see that there's a cost to doing these elections, anywhere between $20,000 and $30,000 per zone. And so it does cost money to come back and do the election. And then if it doesn't pass, I mean, it's kind of a heartbreak on that.
And we run the elections ourselves.
We run the elections ourselves. We use Francisco and Associates. They've always been helping us as far as the consultant. They are our engineer, assessment engineer, and so they do the engineer's report for us. So we work hand in hand with them on everything concerning the LMD. The middle map shows the park zones. And there are park zones 4, 5, and 6. Park zone 4 is above Herndon, north of Herndon. That one, we did have an election pass the last time we ran it. They tend to pass more. Park zone 6, and I'll get to 5, park zone 6 is where you see no color, because there's no parks. And so that zone is in pretty good shape, because there's really, I shouldn't say there's no parks, but there's not much to take care of. And I think you could, well, that's really tiny writing. But, and then Park Zone 5 is, south of Herndon, east of Sunnyside, up to Locan, and that's where about half of the coverage has property, because the LMD went into effect at the point in time where we were able to capture a certain amount of residents to pay into that LMD, but a good half of the amount of the residents don't. I can't tell you the reason for that decision. I don't know. But it does make it more difficult in a way. In a way, it doesn't, because it's really the only ones that are going through a vote are the ones being assessed. So they're the only ones that get to participate in that vote. So really, on the park zone, when it's not being approved or it's not passing the vote, it's the assessed voters saying they don't want to spend any more or have improved maintenance, or actually just have maintenance in zone 5.
I think it's not about me, but I happen to live in that zone. It's just that I use the park, but I don't have to pay. That's right. Weird to me. That doesn't make any sense at all. And I think that's where I still can't, I see that, but you could almost say if I have to pay for it, but half my zone doesn't have to pay, I probably wouldn't want to pay either. So it's an unusual setup. I don't know how it got that way. And that's where I thought everybody should pay, but that's not what we have at the moment, so anyway.
Send something in.
Make a donation?
Yeah, make a donation.
Do you take donations for park funds?
Huh?
Should.
Oh, is that's on another map?
Scott, I had a question with regards to these first two maps. So if I live, we'll just say, in that Zone 5 orange section and then Zone 2 pink, am I getting 2 fees then?
Yes.
So one for streets and then another for parks?
Right.
Okay.
Yes, yes, you'll get assessed. So somebody in Zone 1, say somebody's in the green zone, and they're in the park zone, okay, because now I'm going to really take this to a different place. If you add the third map, like folks in Town and Country are paying for Zone 1, Park Zone 4, and then they're paying enhanced features like DeVille. They're paying additional features on that. So there's some of the highest cost fees that we're charging. So they'll pay 3 fees. And you'll see that in the engineer report, that there's 3 fees adds up to the total. So yes, but absolutely, if you're overlapping on those zones and you're in that assessment, yes, you're paying for both those.
And can parcels opt in?
Yes. Anybody can
like Lynn can opt in?
Absolutely. Now, it's good that she stepped away.
We can solve it.
Yeah. We could go around with a flyer and have people sign up if they'd like to, but generally with that, it's a voluntary, it's not a. So I'm going to go back just to the last map again. I think it's important. All that tiny writing, So we have all these, what we call entry features or enhanced zones, okay? That's even beyond. And so if you go to newer areas like Buchanan Estates, and you drive in and you see that beautiful circle feature when you're coming in, and you see the pilasters and the entry feature that says, wow, this looks really nice, those are part of these enhanced feature, these enhanced LMD zones. And what they do is those folks have to pay a little bit more on top of the other zones for the city to maintain their feature, because the benefit is for their development. It's not citywide. It's not a larger benefit. It's a very narrow benefit to those property owners.
Then we rezone. You won't feel like it's unfair anymore.
Oh, good. What happened?
You can opt in.
Did you raise my rate while I was gone?
Yeah, you can opt in now.
Never go to the bathroom in the middle of a rate increase discussion. Okay, I'm opting in.
Yeah, but give her the forms now.
The enhanced LMDs include things like DeVille. So, you know, those kinds of features and stuff for those neighborhoods that came in and are a benefit to their direct area.
And Scott, go back to that. Okay, so for side street and street median, each zone potentially can have a different vendor taking care of those. Is that correct as well?
Yes. Right now we have one. We've gone with the one-size-fits-all elite, and because they provided us the best service for the best price, and so we chose to go with them. And they seem to be doing a pretty good job for us right now.
So they're doing all the zones for street right now?
Yes.
Okay. And those contracts are?
They're 3-year contracts renewed each year, so we could terminate it on a yearly basis, but it's a 3-year contract. And then I think there's still another year left on the current 3-year term, at least. And so what we do is we'll come back with an RFP and we'll go out again, and I mean, generally we'll get 3 or 4 contractors bidding on or proposing, because those are RFPs, they're not bids. Okay. It's not by lowest cost, but we'll get those, and then we'll go through a process of evaluation and negotiation. Same thing.
And the neighborhood parks are done by us?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Not contracted out?
No.
Okay. And what about enhanced zones?
Those are done by us too, except lately we've been adding them as a component in the contracts, because there's not much maintenance need to be done. So it just depends. We look at them individually if it makes sense to put an entry feature in with the elite. If they're mowing the side street and they're running into it and they overlap, it just makes sense to have them continue. A lot of the cost for the entry features is for the pilasters, is for the special things, you know, it's for the real niche kind of things, as opposed to just maintenance. There are some trees and shrubs, but most of it is.
And then the fees assessed must be used in that zone, or can they,
generally
Zone
speaking,
5 be used in 4? The funds.
So, that's a good question. Generally speaking, we would like that to be the case, and that should be the case. But I'm going to show you where that's not the case, and for a certain amount of time, it's okay for a zone, because they all exist in Landscape District Number 1. They all exist under this umbrella. But each zone is supposed to stand on its own, but for a period of time, and that time is how comfortable we feel about that time. It can, if they go into a deficit condition, we need to try to address it, but it can be, I don't want to use the word subsidized, because ultimately it will have to pay back its own, because we keep bookkeeping on that. We know how negative it has to, how negative it's gone and how much money needs to be paid back to it. So we are accounting for each zone separately, but you will see when we get into like Park Zone number 5, it has a negative fund balance.
Do these funds pay for, let's say we decide someday every tree, shrub should be drought tolerant, drought resistant, all of that. Are these funds to make that transition and replace trees and bushes and shrubs, or is that a different fund in a different spot?
So, for the general funded portions, non-LMD, it's, you save the money and you change out the landscape when you have the funds to go and do that. The LMDs that are funded, like Loma Vista and Heritage Grove has already designed that way to some extent, and Loma Vista.
Yeah, it's the older
Loma Vista, as we go through this, and we get into more, we already had the WELO and stuff, so that we've designed it to meet some of the water standards, but yes, they keep pushing them more and more. When we get to a point we need to trade out the plants and whatnot, we do have the funding, like in Loma Vista in the northeast zone, to change them out with drought tolerant and go to a different view, or a different palette of plants. In Zone 2, which is the street side landscaping, as opposed to a park, because I don't think a park you're really gonna, you're gonna keep it as a turf and whatnot for the passive use or active use you have on that. But for a Zone 2, you would want to collect enough funding ultimately to make those decisions. But we are in a Zone 2 didn't pass last time either, and you get in a position where you're just trying to maintain what you got. There is a natural process of drought tolerance that's happening out there.
They're called dead plants.
Yeah, dead grass,
That's another
dead
way,
plants,
you said it much
yes.
nicer. A natural process of drought tolerant, that's much better than dead plants. That's fair.
Okay. So I'm going to go over these. Feel free to say what the heck is going on. Each slide of the next, are based upon the same theory concept of this. So if I get this across, I'm doing pretty good. Zone 1, the current rate is $99.50 per year. It was approved in 2022. That was a increased election that we went, and the voters in that area approved that. There is no CPI. It's contractor maintained, and it's a stable budget right now. So, and forgive me, I've got to squint on this, that the cost to maintain it are about $1.3 million. Of that, I'm going to say that the red general funded portion, every LMD zone, basically, except for the enhanced, has a component of general fund in it because it can be used by the general fund. So we have to take into account that there's some enjoyment from the city at large in every LMD zone outside of the enhanced. So if you look at the Loma Vista zone or Heritage Grove, if you look at the park Village Green, we know Village Green is going to be used by general fund folks too, not paying into that zone. So they do have some responsibility, and it's generally about 5 to 6%. And that isn't actually, it's a determined number about, we go through, what would be the visitations and usage and those types of things. So that is a benefit to the zone as money coming in through the general fund, so it reduces the expenditures needed. And then we go through, we have a revenue that we bring in. That's through all the people that are paying, the folks paying the property taxes. And at the end, the big number is, are we positive or negative? So right now, we are generating funds in that Zone 1 that we can put aside for 5 to 10 years from now, because eventually, because we can't raise the rates, inflation and cost of providing that maintenance is going to overtake the revenue in Zone 1, and that number is going to turn red instead of being black. When it turns red, we go, uh-oh, and that's when we start looking at when do we come to council and request an increase so that we don't go into the negative fund balance. We do not want to go into negative fund balance. Each zone should stand on its own. Benefit Zone 2 is the same principle. So you can look here and you're going to...
Question on standing on its own. So if it was red and 5 was black, would you take from 5 to make Zone 1 black for this year, or how does that decision...
So we would not take from a zone. Well, you would take from the money in the pot in the LMD District Number 1. So it has an overall fund balance. There's only one pot of money. Say we have $10 million in fund balance. We do all this bookkeeping, there's still a fund balance sitting there. So what we are is every zone is chipping in right now to help Zone 5, Park Zone 5, get through this problematic period where we can't get an increase. But we're not taking from one zone and moving that money over to, because it comes in, it goes into one big pot of money, and the LMD and we bookkeep it out. This is what the engineer's report is. We know what each one's bringing in, we know the money going out, but we still have revenues that are coming in that are going into a fund balance. In each of those zones, they're collecting for things like replacement of landscape, if we went drought tolerant, or replacement of the play structures, or you name it.
So let me ask this. How will it work once I'm in that district and now Zone 5 is my district and I'm in the black every year and it's going into this general fund, and we just use Drew's district is red. You keep taking that general fund, helping his district. We can't do that as council members later, or how do we prevent that later on so we aren't?
Well, you can just put you can't do that. Okay. And we wouldn't do that. The problem is how to deal with the immediate problem in Zone 5. Okay, since we focus on Zone 5, the Park Zone 5, which is, or Park Zone 2, but it's not in a negative anymore at this point. Mm-hmm. It's heading that way because of the red at the end. Park Zone 5 is in a negative. It is using funds in the fund balance to get by right now. There's a few ways to go about correcting that. One is using general fund to offset those costs. Now, I wouldn't recommend that just because those costs are a burden of those folks that live out there. That's for them. That's their responsibility, I would say. And that's why that LMD zone was formed, and that's their parks. And if you use general fund for them, there's 57 other zones. And so I think that's probably not a good place to go to. We can keep trying elections, and we can keep trying to get more forceful. I think when we get to talking about the next item, we're going to be hoping that we get public to step up, grassroots efforts. Staff has in the past been prohibited from advocating, but I surely think we can get on the edge of education, whatever that means, but not advocating. And that would be, there's a gray area. We don't want to cross that line, but we can surely tell them if we don't get any more funding, we can't maintain these parks. I think going through last season and the amount of complaints, it's not in everybody's head right now, but it was in the fall when people were very, very, very upset with us because we didn't mow the lawns. Well, we can't. We didn't take care of this play structure. There is no money. There is not enough funds to do that. And so and that's where Tim will be here. He'll explain the difference between normal and severe service levels. And so there's that. There is the other thing is you just cut maintenance until you just cut out mowing and stuff, and you'd mow every 2 months. And eventually we could come up with an equation that says we'll dig ourselves out of the red by not performing any service. And I don't think that's palatable either. So it's really, we're in a hard place because there's no automatic kicker or escalator or CPI to keep going with the costs. And I think everybody knows that COVID introduced a new paradigm as far as inflation. And for most folks, they still tell you inflation, it was, 10%, 20%. As a public utilities and maintenance operations, most things we see went up 100%. And, so when we go through and we start bringing other things to the council's attention and take I hate to mention development fees, and you go through the capital costs, and everybody's going, wow, that's twice as much, because it's twice as much. And so something happened to the cost of services and the cost of products that is here to stay. It's not going back in, unless something amazing happens.
Yeah, so is there a process by which we could do an educational campaign or such to allow those, like Councilmember Ashbeck, to opt into these zones?
Yes.
Because, that would be another way to increase the fund balances, right, to get more people paying into them. Because I know there've been a number of workshops or conversations that have talked about this, and inevitably someone says, I don't pay into that, but I don't know why. I would be happy to contribute. So I think there's just kind of a lack of education out there for people to understand what these are, because I do agree that I could see being like, well, hey, half the people here aren't even paying for this, why should I pay for it? But maybe the flip of that is we need to make sure those people who aren't paying into it understand that they have an option. They can actually choose to participate in what it is that they're benefiting from. So how could we look at something like that?
Right, and I'm going to look to Scott Cross, because I don't want to cross any lines between avocation or getting out there and doing something that could be perceived even as inappropriate. But I imagine you can have staff put together educational campaigns on those things. Again, we would be bound or limited to saying what are the consequences, but we couldn't go out and conduct a door-to-door solicitation and trying to get people, on board with something like that.
But wasn't it last year that, I think it was my brilliant idea, that we put signs in our parks? And how'd that work out? It didn't really work at all. It still didn't pass.
It didn't pass. So I don't have the metrics to know if that
so there you had the
worked or not.
consequences right in front of you when you were taking your kids to the park, and you're still like, yeah, no, it's okay.
But maybe it didn't pass as badly.
It failed better? Right, is that a thing?
Well, I would say this, that the previous two elections, it barely failed. I think last time it failed by quite a bit more.
Okay, great. More you know. I think one thing, so for me, I think partly why this is impossible to explain, there is no way, this is what I think, the city the size of Clovis should have 79 zone districts. That is ridiculous. So in my mind, if it was simple, if there were 6 zone districts and it covered it all, I think it'd be it would be so much easier streets, and I think it's just overly complicated for the city we have. My other question is, what about Measure Y? I can argue that public safety is influenced by clean streets and nice, tidy parks. That's a thing. So if we're not going to spend, if I was a citizen, I am one. I would say, wait, I just passed a sales tax for clean and safe streets and public safety. What about that? So I think we're going to bump into that somewhere along the way.
Let me try to answer both of your questions briefly. Measure Y, we have every hope as a Public Utilities Department to get a little funding for the general fund areas that we can't maintain. I don't know if you'd want to carve any out for these LMD areas for maintenance. The reason there's 57, or there's a multitude of benefit zones, is that each area has its own level of maintenance and expectations. So to do a citywide one and to lump this part of the city in and charge them the same as Heritage Grove, who's going to receive 8 times the service because they have 8 times the amenities. I think we're too late to get to that. It should have started right at the beginning. And even then, if you would have done something like that, it would be potentially called the CFD, which Paul will be bringing later. Yeah. And you would still have separate funding and expenditure zones in those to match the level of service each one of these developments or these areas is wanting. So when you made the plan for Heritage Grove and Loma Vista, that is a $430 a year, payment from those folks that live there, as opposed to people that live in Zone 1 are paying $99. And so, but if you look, the amenities in Zone 1 are not the same as the amenities in Loma Vista. So
I hear, I guess, I just feel like we've gotten to a I mean, people have different expectations, okay?
Mhm.
But I mean, there's gotta be some, I'm not smart enough to know, but I do think it's just a wildly complicated, I don't know how this is sustainable as our city grows. I honestly don't know. I mean, that's why I don't have your job, but I just think it's wildly complicated.
The new developments, the LMDs are sustainable for growing.
It's the rest of the 79
The rest of the zone 1 through 6 are not, because of the ability to not be able to increase rates according to inflation and the cost of doing business.
You can continue with this slide here, Scott.
Okay.
We did
Zone 2, at the end of the day, we get into the red on an annual basis, so that fund is now heading in a deficit. The balance on that fund is still in the black. It's still okay. We had an election a few years back. We're still doing okay. But we did say, when we saw the red coming, we wanted to do an election, and we tried to do it last year, and it didn't pass. Okay, so we're trying to get out ahead of these things so we can get these elections passed so that we can generate funds so the fund balance doesn't go negative. We understand the deficit. Now, what this is going to cause is a reduction in services. As we're watching this, we're going to make an assessment. We're going to say, hey, we're going to have to pull back on services because we don't want to go into a negative fund balance. And I lost my parks assistant director, and he could have. Anyway, so then the next zone is Zone 3. That is this other area of town, and it kind of like Shaw Avenue. You remember the project that was done off of the freeway with the new 4 palm trees? That was done with Zone 3 funds because we did change out the palette to hopefully something more pleasing. It was brought by planning, Dwight Kroll. And so we made that happen. But that fund is actually doing well. It brings in revenue in the black, and it has a fund balance. Zone 4, which you'll see in the next item that we do, is it's starting to be a worry. The current rate is $49.86 per year. The last approved Prop 218 was in 2016. There's no CPI, of course, on that. It includes parcels within a third of a mile of the 20 parks. And we will list those parks in the next item so you will actually know exactly what we're talking about. And they're city maintained, and it is in a budget deficit now. And it's in quite an extensive budget deficit. And so I would gather to say we still probably have a couple $100,000 in fund balance, but we're heading fairly quickly towards going negative in fund balance because of the deficit there. It's a large one. So what we would do if the next item doesn't go well, or if we were to ask for an election and it doesn't pass, we would have to start reducing services to that area. Benefits Zone 5 is the one we focus on because it's failed elections 3 times. You can see that's at $50.10 a year. The last one was approved in 2013 when I started in public utilities, so there was some good luck then. But it's failed ever since. And again, that one is in a deficit condition, and the fund balance is red, is in a negative condition. Any questions on all the, and then benefit zone?
I do have a question on the last one. It's failed since 2013. Are there any conclusions we're drawing from that failure? Is it because it has a large amount of multi-unit properties that one voter votes no on?
They have a heavy weight when the property manager or owner votes no, because they vote for the total amount of area that it's serving. So the equivalent dwelling units is up to 45, 50. The other one's even bigger on Fowler and Temperance. You have 2. You have Bullard and Temperance and Fowler and Temperance. They generally tend to not vote in favor of these because they probably don't see any benefit. They have a small little frontage and, hey, no big deal. So it is quite a weight to get passed on their weighted average. I would say in 2016, we fell by 1 vote.
Right.
In 2022, I think we fell by almost as much, 1 or 2. Yeah. I mean, really disheartening. And in 2023, I don't think it was close. So moving on to Zone 6, this is neighborhood parks. As you can tell, we have 1. And that's the older area of town. And we don't have any issues there. And the Loma Vista zone, you can see that we generate a lot of additional funding. And you would say, well, you know, decrease rates are, we have to start collecting for the eventuality of the whole area being built out. It includes much additional parks. Village Green has barely been opened up. So there's going to be a lot of additional costs coming on board in the southeast zone. Additionally, you like to collect, and we have an opportunity in these new development areas, you'd like to collect for the replacement, the infrastructure, the depreciation of everything so that you have the ability that when something happens, like Pasatiempo Park, we've already replaced the pour-in place. That's a very pricey activity, maintenance activity, into 200 to 300. I think that was closer to 300,000 in Loma Vista. I know it's Dry Creek Park, which is a general funded park, we were at like 150 to 200,000. It's very expensive to replace the poured in place, the spongy material for fall zones in these park areas, in these play lots. And Northwest is just starting out, and again, we're collecting just like we did in Loma Vista. We need to gain a larger fund balance so that we can afford the future. And then the benefit zones, I'm not going to go through each one. There are a couple that are in the slight negative in deficits, and those are the ones we come and request increases through when we do the initiation to levy on the LMD, and those have the ability to levy up to a certain point, and so those are really, even if they show red, and even if the fund balance goes a little bit of negative, we have the ability to adjust, and we are stable in all of those zones. So the annual levy process, council must approve 3 resolutions for assessments to be collected. A resolution of initiation, that'll come in March every year. A resolution of intention is followed up in April. And then the resolution to levy assessments in June, and that's when we have we have a public hearing, and we provide you the engineer's report. That's where you see the public has the ability to come in and be heard about if they don't like the increases that are being proposed. And then if they're accepted by council and approved, then they're added to the property tax roll in July. So the takeaways here is we have a detailed, and I can tell you that if you have any interest and you want to see some gigantic spreadsheets that are linked and looped and whatever you want to call it with each other of all the zones and how they operate, we call it the how we commingle all this data so that we can produce something that's brief. This is the brief part. The spreadsheets are very large with a lot of data-driven information, includes all our maintenance, operation, and things. So we account for each benefit zone. Again, we have to look at each area as their own benefit, and that's how we make a determination on the assessments. And I would say that we don't do it in a box. We work with our assessment engineer, Francisco and Associates, on all of this, and they give us the insight and advice on what to do. In fact, when we go through each zone on the ones that have the escalator and CPI built in, and we talk about each zone. We look at where we're at, maintenance condition-wise, what we need to do, and generally we try to recommend the smallest increase we can. And occasionally we get to throw in a decrease, which always feels good. Zones 1 through 6 do not have a CPI. And the street lights are not included. This is the arterial and collectors. They're not included in the LMD. So currently, they are funded by general fund, which is limited, and the highway users tax, which is a competition for actually doing potholes in streets and things like that, as opposed to paying PG&E to keep the lights on. So we do have a plan that we're going to bring to council in hopefully next month, and hopefully it's Paul, but a public utilities CFD, which is going to allow us going forward. This is where you may not, going forward to bring in a funding source, because the city is only a third built. We have 2/3 left, and we cannot sustain paying for street lighting with general fund, and we don't have enough highway users tax to divert to cover what's the deficit between, and PG&E costs are going up 20, 30 something % each year. It's exorbitant. So that'll be coming. But I did want you guys to be aware of that, and we are ready for any questions on the workshop.
Any other questions of staff regarding?
And I apologize.
Do you ever see a day where it would be simpler, or is it too late?
I do not see a day, because each area has their own assessment and is benefit driven to that area. And so you couldn't put the Northwest and Loma Vista in this. The CFD also has, and you would probably go into a CFD model, not an MD. The CFD has some issues, and Paul's going to get into those when he does the presentation, that you can't charge for services already provided. So everywhere we look, we have hurdles to overcome. But I think we're putting our heads together, and we're going to have some really good options going forward. Going back and trying to fix or trying to address what the history has brought us to is much more difficult.
Any other questions? Okay, we're going to go ahead and open up the public portion. Anyone in the public would like to comment on this or questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll close it. This is a receive and file. So thank you, staff. Thank you, Scott, for the presentation. We're going to go ahead and move now to item 13. And so this is consider approval, authorization of city staff to proceed with a assessment increase election for landscape maintenance district number 1, benefit zones 4 and 5, and authorize the city manager to enter into an agreement with Francisco and Associates Incorporated to administer the landscape maintenance district assessment increase election. And Scott is also the staff on this.
Okay, so good evening again. I'm hoping that the previous workshop dovetails into this and makes this a simpler request from staff, so that, and we've gone over the basis of how the LMD exists and why we are in this problem. So again, the overview is 50 total benefit zones within the district. I apologize if I was saying 57, 50. Pretty soon it'll be 57. Zones 1 through 6, Prop 218 is required for the increase. There's currently no CPI. Again, zones 7 through 49, the southeast and the north, and 7 through 49 are the enhancement, the LMD, the entry features and things like that, with like Duville and stuff like that. Again, and the southeast is Heritage Grove, and the southeast is Loma Vista, and the northwest is Heritage Grove. We don't have a Prop 218 at this point. We haven't had to do one because we have the ability to increase the rates to keep up with the cost of the maintenance. Zones 4 and 5 are currently in need of an assessment increase election. So looking at the benefit zone 4 neighborhood parks, they're all listed there. They are generally north of Herndon. Looks like there's a one or two. Not sure, I can't see. But the last time we passed, the last time it passed was in 2016. It passed with a good majority. It wasn't, that one wasn't, that difficult to get through. That zone tends to, approve, Prop 218s. The current rate is $49.86 a year. We're proposing, so we're going to do something different, and we're going to do something different on both these park zones. We're not going to try to go for a larger value. Like I think last time we were up like $25 a year in Zone 5. What we're going to try to do is do something more modest, which is a $15 increase per year. So right off the bat, the residents would get a $15 a year increase, but then a CPI not to exceed 3%, and there's the CPI on that. And so generally CPI runs anywhere between 2.5% to 3%, let's say 2.5%, and so that's what you could anticipate as an increase. And we would bring it back through the engineer's report to council every year, and if you did not want to do the increase, you could always not do that. So it's always up to council to approve the increase. Was there anything? So yeah, the total is $65 per year. Zone 4 status, and I'll let, well, when we get to Zone 5, I'll let Tim explain the difference between routine and you're going to see a word called severe. The park conditions are in a pretty good condition out there in Zone 4, but the playground structures are aging. The expenditures have exceeded the annual assessments. So you can see with the green line, that's the revenue. It's fixed. There is no CPI. We never get an increase. The red line is the cost of doing business. And so, and below that, the blue bars are the fund balance. So you could see that we're projected in a year or two, not next year, but the 25, 26, or could be, we're going to go in a negative condition. So that's why we're asking for the increase now to try to keep us from going into a negative condition. Zone 5, the neighborhood parks there are listed to the right. There's 11 of them. The last increase was in 2013. The last election increase was $10 per year, which make the current rate $50.10 per year. We've tried 3 times since then to get an increase, and that hasn't worked out quite well. We would have tried during the COVID time, but that would have been even more difficult to place on the residents at that time, so it was postponed to 2022. We got a little bit worried that we were really heading in a bad trajectory, and that's why we came out with a 2023 election. And you can see here we are in 2025. We think it's the most important zone to try to get an increase. Again, on this, we're proposing to overall make this the same as Zone 4, $65 per year per resident that pays into it, which equates to a $14.90 per year increase with a CPI added to it. That would happen in the future years so that it would be able to add additional revenue and hopefully keep up with the maintenance there. With that value, it's not as much as we were asking for in 2023. We were trying to get over the hump in 2023, knowing that one revenue collection remains stable for the next 5 or 10 years, and we're going to go right back into a deficit condition. With this, the $65 won't get us out of the hole right away, but it will in the next few years. And with the CPI, we should, over the next 5, 10 years, become stable in Zone 5. And so what we're kind of looking at is Zone 4 and Zone 5, being that they have the same type of park amenities and play structures and those things, is that they would be basically paying about the same. The CPIs would run identical, and so these things would, in the future, be just taken out of the 1 through 6. We'd only talk about 1 through 3 and 6, and 4 and 5, if the election were to pass, would be stable on their own and identical into revenue. So I'm gonna let, Tim speak a little bit about what severely reduced maintenance schedule means.
Thought I was gonna make it out of here pretty clean, but I guess not. So, well, good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. So I guess I'll just use the summer months, because it's a more active growing season, more maintenance activities. So I'll use the word mow to encompass everything we do, which is the mowing, edging, blowing, weed eating, everything. And so in typical summer months, regular routine maintenance happens once a week at these parks. Severely reduced, we could put that back 6 to 8 weeks. And that's when we start running into issues, and that's where we are in Zone 5 right now.
Wait, from once a week to every 6 to 8 weeks? That's what severely reducing?
Correct. And when the go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, we've gone through transitions to get to severely. There was normal, limited, extra limited.
Really limited,
Yeah.
limited? Okay.
And in the summer months, when it's 100, to 110 degrees, those weeks make a huge difference. And in order to keep the growth manageable, we have to reduce water, or else by the next time we get there, we've got an unsafe area. When we start reducing water, we start jeopardizing our long-term investments like the trees. We get spots of grass that we can't fill in. I mean, it just goes downhill quick. It's just very important that we stay away from that if possible.
We are at that level. And so, and I know that, this last season, there was a lot of complaints out there because the grass was looking more like weeds, and we got the dandelions, and so you got all this stuff growing that is much more stronger than just grass because we are limiting water, and it doesn't look good. Staff is embarrassed by it, but we have only a certain ability to provide maintenance out there, and sometimes it gets to the hot spots, right? And we want to take care of those. We want to do what's right for the citizens. We hear a lot about everybody pays taxes, they deserve better, and we do understand that, and we would like to provide that. But going into this graph, as you can see, we're in the red, and we're just continuing in the red. And that's a fund balance red. That means that zone cannot pay for the services it needs. And so when we say severe, you can see it's gone through multiple reductions in level of service. And we are at a very inadequate level of service in Zone 5. And right now it's fine, but I would say in another month as the rains hit and the clover starts growing and other things start growing, it's not going to be fine. Not to mention that the play structures and equipment, we can't replace them. When they fail or break, we remove them. Or if they become a safety hazard, we just have to take them down.
Well, same with basketball, I know Gettysburg, you did some kind of refresh work on the Gettysburg Park, right?
Gettysburg is a general fund park,
Right,
and so, yes.
So eventually everything is going to age to the point where it's not going to be stable.
So Thorburn Park, the larger park, is LMD funded in Zone 5, and we've had to shut the doors on that, especially if there's vandalism and things like that. We don't have the dollars to maintain it. And that's the only park in Zone 5 that has a restroom. So thank goodness for that. But we don't have the dollars to maintain that park. So if somebody's yelling that it's closed down over the summer, it may be why we're trying to figure out a way to divert dollars to maintain it, because we just can't maintain things at a level of everybody's expectations.
I had a question with regards to sort of that big blue and the big peak there.
Yes.
It was still in blue because it must have been gone into the reserves? Is that why?
So the blue means that we had a positive fund balance.
Okay,
at that point. And you can see that our costs went up that year.
Yeah.
The parks manager had conferred that we had some safety issues to deal with as far as surfacing and play structure issues. So at that point in time, we thought we would potentially get an increased election, and so we needed to deal with those issues. They were a high priority. There was a decision made to invest some dollars into that. All that did was exacerbate the curve to get down into a negative fund balance. And by not being able to pass these recent elections, we may not have made the wisest choice. But it was for safety. There was legitimate, pressing needs for that.
Thank you. Bong, I have a question. Yeah. And this is one of the times when an elected official makes a suggestion and people probably roll their eyes. Is there any viability to taking Zone 4 park equipment, replacing that as we are going to do, refurbishing that and using it at some of the facilities in Zone 5 just as a stopgap measure? Or are those things generally, once they're taken apart, you don't even want to give them to another city?
So the way these play structures are put into place, they're done through the development fees as an amenity, and they are anchored very much into the ground, as that is the part of the play structure that holds the slide or the swing set. And so the cost of removal on those things and then to construct or place in Zone 5 would be prohibitive. And generally speaking, the only time we do those things is when they become in a dilapidated condition that we are forced to replace. So we don't, in Zone 4, we don't go out and improve the amenity. We improve if the swing set, the saddle is gone or ruined, we'll replace that. We generally won't take out the swing set. But even if we did, so there's some beautiful structures in Zone 4, but we wouldn't necessarily take those out. But if we did, they're anchored in concrete, 5, 6 feet, especially if they have a tarp on top and those types of things. I think it would be cost prohibitive, but we could always look at that. And if there was donations or things like that, of that. But again, it's going to cost some sort of resources to install those things. And then we have to look at the fall surfaces and are they designed appropriately? So if you to look at a slide, it has a special fall surface where the people land, and then there's all kinds of rules and regulations and that we have to follow state law in these things. So it is easy on concept. I think it may be difficult in actually doing that.
I would just ask staff to consider that as an option, and then where council would approach community groups and ask if they can help with it. And obviously, we're going to have to throw them a bone and say this was done by this community group. But I think it would stretch our dollars until hopefully, eventually, we can get this passed or be able to catch up a little bit. But I just figured I'd throw it out there. Good idea by an elected official, which doesn't work. That happens.
Scott, I had a question. On slides earlier in the Northwest, Lynn and I were looking at it, and it was like $476 a year. Yes. Round. How do we do it down here at $65 a year? Is it because there's less amenities?
Less amenities, less.
But it isn't.
At $65 a year, not well. So 65 doesn't give you the level of service that they're going to get in the Northwest, first of all. So 65 is a bare bones, hey, we're trying to dig out of this whole thing. Okay. But the amenities are not nearly as much. So when you're looking at the park amenities in the Northwest, they don't just have parks, they have all these little areas, they have all these other niceties that go along with it. We also have the trail systems, the paseo kind of things. Even in Northwest, they're not necessarily paseos, but they're entry features. And it all goes into that one thing in the one rate that folks pay for. So there is a lot more funding coming in. It also includes all the street side and all the medians, and it's one big larger pot that has been programmed, or the revenue has been studied, and we've identified everything. Okay. Everything we can throw in, everything. Well, you're gonna do this, this is gonna cost this much. You're gonna do this, it's gonna cost this much. We never had the opportunity to do that in zone 1 through 6. We're always playing catch up.
Got it.
So the proposed election timeline, if the council were to approve going forward, is the April 24th would be the deadline to mail the Prop 218s. June 9th, we would come back to council, conduct the public hearing, and collect all the rest of the votes, should somebody submit them that night. The next day, we would start tabulating ballots, and we would hope to come back on June 16th and provide council with some positive news.
Don't use my signs as education, because that was a really bad idea.
Well, we're going to try that and much more as very advanced, aggressive education, as much as we can do. So staff would recommend that authorize city staff to proceed with the LMD Proposition 218 assessment increase election for benefits zone 4 and 5. And what we didn't speak about much, but it's always common practice, is to have Francisco and Associates help us through this process as our assessment engineer consultant. They do this. If you would like to talk with Ed Espinoza, he'd be available on phone. He's not here tonight, but he is available. So with that, we would make that recommendation and open for any additional questions.
Any further questions of staff? Okay, seeing them, we're going to go ahead and open the public portion. Anyone here to speak on this item, number 13? Okay, seeing them, we'll close the public portion and bring it back to the council. What is the pleasure of the council? Go ahead, Lynn.
I'll make a motion that we authorize the city staff to proceed with the assessment increase election for landscape maintenance districts number 1, benefit zones 4 and 5, and authorize the city manager into an agreement with Francisco and Associates to administer that election.
We have a motion. Second. All those in favor, yes, please,
One thing is, so there were a couple things that we had in that discussion, maybe it was the previous one or this, so I don't know if it's appropriate to go back to, whether we can do some education for people to opt in or other, considerations with that. And I don't know if that's something that could work into some of what would go into this particular item, but I want to make sure that those things that were brought up, if there's consensus, that we can make sure that those are part of whatever process is appropriate for them to be a part of going forward.
And I would look to Scott to make sure he's comfortable with proceeding in that direction, then staff would just follow your direction.
Should be okay, Scott?
Absolutely. If you want to give the direction included in the motion, yeah.
Yeah, I think the election is the election, and I think the additional work also needs to continue, so I think it's both things. So how do I opt in? How do we opt in? I think those sorts of things are important as we imagine this going forward. So, but the election seems like a separate action with hiring Francisco and Associates. So both, yes and.
We'll work with Scott, Andy, and Paul to put an educational piece together that hopefully covers where you're going at.
We could just give people like T-shirts, like if you don't pay for a park, you wear a purple shirt, and if you wear, we could think of be creative. You never know what you could come up with.
And Julie, just want to make sure you're okay with the.
I will include that in my second.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0 with 1 abstention. Okay. Thank you. Now we will move to city manager comments.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Just a few events to highlight coming up. On February 13th at Tarpey Elementary, we're having a Meet the Mayor session, as well as on February 20th at Reagan Elementary. Both of those are at 6 p.m. This coming Saturday, we're having an Embracing Wellness event at the Senior Center, and Councilor Ashbeck is speaking of that. Very excited for that. And then following, we have the Clovis Hall of Fame dinner at CVMD the evening of February 26th. I know they're looking to sell tables and seats, and we'd love to see that full. Next week, we'll be having police and fire come and start the budget discussion process on those items, and we're looking to do a special meeting on February 24th for the balance of the departments. There is flexibility on how many departments we address next week. And one last comment, Mackenzie Perez, I believe, is in the room. There she is. Just wanted to congratulate her on being promoted to Deputy City Planner.
Oh, congratulations. You stayed all night for that. Well worth it. Okay, that's it. Okay, we'll now move to city council comments. Lynn?
So, I'm gonna ask your indulgence. I prepared something. I borrowed a sheet out of Diane's book, who's more organized than I am, and it's about 5 minutes long, and I'm gonna ask, I apologize if it seems too long, but I wanna make some comments tonight. I wanna thank folks that came tonight to speak on this non-sanctuary city issue. I thought their comments were heartfelt and personal, and I appreciate that. But the events of this last week have been really, really heavy on my heart. And so in a stream of consciousness moment, I want to offer this for the record. I know there's not many folks here besides our poor staff, but I feel like we need something else in the public narrative than what is out there today, and so that's what I'm attempting to do. The comments are mine, but they are inspired by dozens of people who have reached out to me and asked bluntly, what is this council doing? So I feel some obligation to reply. I will make this statement available to the media should anybody want it tomorrow, because there's just the narrative out there is just not balanced. So that's what I'm hoping. So here I go. During my service on the Clovis City Council, I have never seen a time when our police chief felt compelled to issue a statement in response to actions by the City Council, or when it was suggested that perhaps he didn't understand the law. I have never issued a statement of my own on any subject, disagree or otherwise, in the last 24 years, and there's been a lot of those, or some. I do not remember a time when we governed this city via social media, by seeking individual attention, or by calling our colleagues out as cowardly, wrong, or out of touch, just because we didn't get our way. That is all, not until now. And for the record, 4 council members up here reflect nearly 100 years of service to this community as employees and volunteers, and we have won something like 15 elections between us. That is hardly a definition of out of touch. We are currently caught up in a made-for-social media conflict, making the kind of headlines that we as a community have never sought and long avoided. A conflict that will not solve a problem nor make Clovis a stronger community. And oddly, neither the conflict nor the conversation are about the merits of an actual issue, but rather about politics, fear, and division. It has long been held that the role of our council was to ensure that Clovis was a strong community, united by values we share, welcoming to all, solving local and regional problems on our own or through collaboration with others, attracting and supporting the best staff around, following the laws of the state of California and the U.S. government, and not just the laws we like, and being the best city in Central California. Our most pressing problems are not how to be like Huntington Beach, with all due respect to Huntington Beach, would take their view, but that's about it, or how best to align with the current federal administration, as has been suggested. We recently had an issue about public safety promoted on social media to make Clovis a non-sanctuary city that included a call to action asking those who agreed to contact all of the council members. I got 1 email. That was followed by public demands that we all go along, then disparagement and name-calling of those who dared to disagree, a formula that is sure to lead nowhere. That is not Clovis, or at least it has not been Clovis up until now. And I want to share just a few points I want to get into this public discussion that has only occurred at this point on social media and limited outlets. Fundamentally, this job is not a partisan job. We are elected to serve the entire community, not just those who are registered in the same political party that we are. And even if we were to all share the same political registration on this dais, which we do, we are not all the same. Second, not everyone in Clovis, not even every Republican, wants to align with the federal administration, or with the current state administration, or with any administration. The strength of our community is that we historically have aligned around things that are important to us. We are clear on who we are and why it matters to hold on to our community, to work to make it better, and to not repeat mistakes of the past, and to not intentionally create division for political gain. Third, Clovis is the community it is today because we have focused on our core competencies: land use planning, public safety, education, parks, trails. To those who say that is not enough, You would be the first to complain if our streets were unsafe, or our parks not mowed, or our budget depleted because we were spending precious taxpayer dollars on fighting national and state issues that have been proven we cannot win. We are the safest city in the Valley. Our officers take an oath to enforce the laws, and they are committed to ensuring that everyone follows them, regardless of immigration status. They work with county, state, and federal law enforcement agencies every day to help keep us safe. It is unfathomable to me that we would pass a resolution asking them to enforce something that is against the law. Stoking fear is not leadership. The language we heard at a recent council meeting was discouraging and appalling. It was not leadership, it is not Clovis, and it is not useful. And pandering requires no courage at all. Finally, Clovis has intentionally worked hard for decades to ensure that we are welcoming to all. This current conflict is destructive to so many in our community. It is bad for business, it is hard on our families, our neighbors, and our amazing city employees who work hard to build our community through events, service, and commitment. We can erase years of work with the actions of a few. We have seen that happen, but never here until now. Folks will say, but all we really wanted was to have a conversation. I totally agree with that. In fact, had we discussed having a real conversation, you could have counted me in. But the actions over this past week showed me this was never about a conversation. If it had been, we would have done what often happens when one of us has an idea. We would have called our police chief in advance and asked for public safety data or other background information about our community. Social media was the first time our chief learned of this topic coming his way. And also for the record, our chief is the public safety leader in this community, not the sheriff of Riverside County, a true leader as proclaimed on social media, or anyone else. We would have asked our police chief or the city attorney to educate us in a workshop on the issue of non-sanctuary cities for a clear understanding of the law and its impact on a general law city like Clovis. Then we would have identified options. Work with our state legislators to reform or repeal SB 54, invite our congressional members to a town for a roundtable, partner with other cities to see what we could do together. But we didn't do any of that. I am certain after that kind of productive discussion, the one we will now never have, never, we would have identified ideas that could have helped move this issue along. One voicemail message I received after this past week's chaos said it all. Hey, Lynn, what's happening in Clovis? I don't recognize you guys anymore at all. Sorry. Clovis residents appreciate that their local government works hard every day, delivers consistent results, and minimizes the chaos that so many other cities experience. That is at the risk of changing, and it's not for the better. People have had different political views up here forever. We've had both Democrats and Republicans as council members, yet somehow they could stay focused on building this community together, not tearing it apart by partisan, divisive, and self-serving behavior. Encouraged by so many and by my belief in this community, I will not stay silent and stand by and watch our community be chipped away a little at a time. I will always speak up for the Clovis, all of Clovis, that so many have worked so hard to build. Because otherwise, one day, we will look up and realize we are just like every other placeless city around, divided, angry, partisan, and ordinary. Not on my watch. Thank you for listening. I appreciate the chance to share. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Drew?
I'm in agreement with most of the things that Lynn said. The thing that bothered me the most, and quite frankly, I think it was out of control of any council member, was I got a call on Friday that there was going to be something on Power Talk.
On what?
Power Talk Radio, and that I was specifically named, and as well as, I believe, the chief of police. And I did listen, and the inference was that I'm in violation of federal law and could be subject to arrest by federal authorities. I don't believe it's under control of anybody here. That's the words of the person making it. Obviously, it's a radio program. It was done, I think, for the hyperbole in listenership, but that did not please me. You know, I'm proud of my service to the community, and to have someone accuse me of crime and say I could be arrested, that didn't sit well with me. And unfortunately, that was, when you take leadership and you want it to make it listenership, that's where it goes. So this could have gone differently. I play a role in that. There's probably things I would have handled differently, but hopefully we can move on from that. Diane?
Yeah, I too wanted to address some of the things that had gone on this past week, and I think we can see that the conversation isn't over. We had more people who came to address their elected representatives tonight, and I think that it is important to point out that it doesn't matter if those members of the public who come to address us agree with our position or don't agree with our position. It is something that we should welcome, and I think one of the things that bothered me about last week's meeting was when the public comment portion was referenced as a lost 45 minutes. I thought that was disrespectful to the people who came to address their elected representatives, the people that they put in these seats up here. And I welcome those who came tonight and don't agree with me on this issue. I think that's what this is all about. I had people responding on social media who, indicated, hey, thanks for letting us know where you stand on this issue. Now we know we don't want to vote for you next time. And I respond to them and said, that's exactly how this is supposed to work. We let them know where we stand on things, and that's how they get to make their decisions. And so I think it is important that we continue to respect that part of the process when the public wants to come and address us. And I also think that the whole point of what we've seen go on is precisely why the way that we handle these things is not in the best interest of this community, because I brought something forward and wanted to have a discussion where all options could have been put on the table, where we could have allowed the department heads, our police chief, our city attorney to weigh in and give us perspective and alternatives and really lay everything out there. And instead, this body decided to not engage in that conversation, not to allow that to happen in a structured, agendized item manner. And so it was relegated to Facebook, where it's become a very disjointed and confusing conversation. And I met with our police chief, and we had a great conversation about a lot of different topics. And I want to apologize to Police Chief Kurt Fleming, because I think the fact that you did have to go to social media or felt that you had to defend that was not fair. And I think that the fact that this body didn't allow that conversation to happen in a public forum here in these chambers where everyone could participate, where we could ask you questions for clarification on what our department is expected to do, what the state law requires, where the federal court cases are that weigh in on how our department does the exceptional job that they do. We're constantly commending them for doing so much with so little. And the entire point of this conversation, in my mind, as it relates to public safety, is to push back on a state that handcuffs our law enforcement instead of criminals. And that was the conversation I was hoping that the public, the citizens and community here in Clovis, was going to get to have. I think it's the conversation that they deserve. I think it's the conversation they still deserve. And I think this is the appropriate forum for that. But until this body decides to welcome that conversation into these chambers, there's no other place for those of us who engage with the public and engage with the community on issues that they bring to us. I can't force that conversation here, but I'm not going to turn them down and say I won't talk to them about it. If I have an opportunity to address something in the media, if a radio station or a program reaches out and wants to ask me questions, if a TV station wants to ask me my perspective, I believe that I owe it to those people who put me in this public office to be engaged with the public on these topics. Everyone else gets to decide how they want to do it, but I don't think that any protocols or conversations about what we are or aren't allowed to say in these chambers, certainly not out in the public sphere, is appropriate or warranted. And I don't think that there would ever be consensus to impinge upon those freedoms either. I certainly hope not. And I would still like to see the public get the conversation on this topic, again, with all of the options, with all of the conversations and questions and totality of the issue being able to be discussed in a far more structured and hopefully efficient and substantive manner.
Well, thank you for those comments from my colleagues. I wanted to report out that I went to a CMAC tour with Chad, so thank you for arranging that. I think they do our meetings, and not only that, I think it is something in which a lot of the community can use. Tomorrow is a mayor's meeting on immigration in Selma, and so I think it's supposed to be very neutral. It's more of a listening session to see what the different communities are experiencing and what each city is helping with regards to constituents. Andy reported out with regards to the mayor and city. We're going on this tour, and we'll have a T-shirt at the end. Schools we went to. Yeah. And so we will try to invite one council member kind of closer to where everyone lives to try to get out to just listen to the community, especially because budget is coming up. And so we wanted to go out and also get to introduce Andy to the community as well. We'll be at Tarpey, and then we'll be at Reagan on the 20th, and then we will be at Clovis Transit on the 6th, Bud Rank on the 13th, and on the 20th is Woods. And then tonight we're celebrating Drew's birthday too. So I don't know if we ever do that publicly, but tonight they know. So yeah, and so we appreciate that. I wanted to just say this overall with regards to us working together. Service is very sacred, especially when people who don't know you vote for you and trust in you to do a good job and to do the job they elected you to. And when we are there, I think it's important that, or at least for me, I keep thinking that I'm giving this time to work with the four of you, and that it goes further than what I believe. It goes further than what I supported you on, what I didn't support you on, but that we actually become humans with each other and actually like each other and actually respect that, hey, I know your spouse, I know your kids, I've seen them here and there, and it goes beyond that. And even in the people that we meet and the staff that we interact with, and it goes further than just, there's a report, I'm here to stamp this, stamp that, object here. But, that outside, and I say it's sacred because this type of government, local government, it's right next to the people. So whatever we decide, we're going to see them at Save Mart later or Vaughn's, and we're going to bump into them. But whatever's happening in the state and in D.C., and they're comfortable. They can make all these controversial decisions, and it's like it's easy because they're so far away from us. So they can make decisions and say things, and it's like, when am I going to run into Trump, right? How many times am I going to run into the governor? And so I look at it and go, they can do certain things, but here it's special. And what I've seen in those who have come before, and what is special about Clovis is, 168 came in, we'll just say Old Town was revived. I can never pin it on, it was Council Member X. He was the one, she was the one. It was always just, that was done for Clovis. We did it for Clovis. And no one ever said, oh, here I am. I made that happen. I made this happen, or I stopped that. And it was never about an I. It was always what was best for Clovis. And I hope we maintain that. And more important, I hope we defend each other. So that way when my supporters or Manatua out there says, we hate Lynn, I don't sit there and go, yeah, say some more bad things. I need to be able to go, no. She loves Clovis. You can't say that. We disagreed on this. And I need to be able to stop my people from breaking us up. Because if we are broken, they will be broken and the city will be broken. But if we don't stand for each other and we call for each other's necks, it makes it very difficult for people to see that, hey, we got Clovis united. And it can be just a fraction or one step away from conservatism. He was more right than I am. Or, she was more left than I am, or he was more left. It's those little things, and those things don't matter too much. And I'll say this with regards to the current issue with non-sanctuary. There's some things sometimes people don't understand how it affects others. You see, I think when the gentleman said, your kids will never be checked, that is true, you see, because they won't check. They won't check a white ID, right? Why would they check a white person's ID? Because they're not, an illegal. But everybody with yellow skin, black skin, brown skin, they're going to check those first. Now, if you can make it where Kurt checks every ID, I'm all for it. Stop the white guy, the black guy, the green guy, everyone. But he won't be able to. He's just going to go, I'm going to check that Asian guy first or that black guy. That's just natural. It's not racist. It's just natural because but you see, we affect that family, though. We affect them in ways we forget. And then we start to divide. And so what we say does matter. What we say does affect the people we lead. And that's what I wish more from us, that we own it, and that when we create the division, that we go, I caused that too. I caused that brown group to feel like they are isolated, and I caused that street to feel like they're not important. And we caused Dry Creek to not feel like we care about them, about those streets. We have to own it because we voted every time. But if we can stand confidently and say, yeah, and like Jose would say, because you're not in the city, okay, at least he had a reason. But if we don't own it, then I think we're not man and woman enough to go, no, I created that and I shouldn't create that. I don't know what the decision is, but the decision was clear that it was not a big enough issue for this council to involve our staff to discuss it. And sometimes if that's the will of the council, whether it's 3-2 or 4-1, it's still an issue that we need to move on from. And if we care enough about whatever issue that we can bring forward, just care enough about the work in front of us first. Like if we read the stuff you give to us, if you know that on page 136 is where they can increase the fee or not increase the fee, I'm good. But if you can't and don't, then I go, well, you haven't done the work they voted us to do. Do that work first. Know that work well. And be able to defend that work with whatever decision we make. I know I'm the one that is complimented and or made fun of for reading everything. But that's what I thought they voted me to do. Because if they didn't, then you just give me a summary, and then I'll be happy, and I can make my decision. But the citizens voted me to read those. And, I was worried because I was like, there's another 174 pages, another 350 pages in RFPs. And I'm going, oh, my goodness. Yeah, how am I going to get through that to fairly read their responses and to make a better decision? And I go, I need to do that. And if I can do that, anything else, it doesn't matter yet. We have so many issues, Measure Y, the fees, and I want to be not an expert, but intelligent enough with the materials that the staff brings us and the applicants to be able to go, this is the best decision I can make with this. And I think if we do that, we'll realize there's not enough time to do anything else yet because we've got enough issues because they're relying on us to do our job so that way we can make intelligent decisions, informed decisions for the citizens. And so I don't know what I'm saying. I'm not opposed to either of you because I like both of you. And even last week, you know, Lynn said, hey, Vong, that mayor title, when you stand someplace, it matters. I take it as, yeah, you're right. I may still stand there, but you're right. I need to think twice. I need to reflect. You know, it doesn't mean mayor means master, mayor means more intelligent, mayor means nothing. It just means they think more of me, so now I need to be even more careful with where I stand, with what I say, and with whom I associate myself with. You know, when the matter was coming forward, I fell on my face, and I looked, I said, you know, what? You know, we do this all the time, and it's okay to speak about it because it's me. What would Jesus do? And I thought when they were, and it seems like I'm preaching, but it's to show where I stand. When they were coming to arrest Jesus, right? Some of us think, you know, so an issue's coming. Yeah, sanctuary. I'm against it. And so we think the Peter response is the best response, because we draw the sword and we cut that ear off. But Jesus didn't do that. He said, hey, put your sword away. I have my ways, and I'm going to do it my way. And so he did what? He healed. He touched the person, the enemy, and he called the enemy by name. And many times, the two sides, we don't get to know each other by name. And whether it's the far right, you go, I don't know that far right guy's name. But once you know, then you go, he's also just a husband who has a wife, who has kids. And in the same way, the other way. Because Jesus said, you know, Malchus, named him out. They didn't name the woman at the well. They didn't name anyone else. They named this guy. They didn't name the thief hanging on the cross, but named this guy. Because I think he was teaching us that when it's hard, take a step back. It's not the sword. The sword time is not now. It's the time to be more Christ-like than I've ever been. And my biggest worry is that the people who, and so since I'm a Christian, I worry that the people out there who look, and they look at me and my actions, I worry that they say, that guy ain't a Christian. You know, that's deep when someone out there looks at me and says, the way he acts, the way he speaks, the way he whatever, that's not a Christian. And yet I profess to be one. And my hope is that through the 8 years and whatever years I will serve here, that when I leave, they won't just say, oh, yeah, he was a good council member, but they'll go, he's a good person inside too. And I want that. I want that from our citizens, and I want to be able to look at everyone that way. And that's why I look at both of you as, you both care a lot about Clovis, and you're not going to win every time, but we need to still be together. Let's make it, you know, no one can break us apart. And that's my hope. I don't know what that's worth, and I don't know where it goes, but I just wanted to share that as well and just let staff know. So that's all I have. Adjourn, and we're going to close session for 2 items. Scott, are we going to report out on these at all?
We're not, I believe we're not asking for any action on either of these items, just some negotiating parameters for staff.
Okay. Do we need to read these at all? For the record?
We can just read, there's 2 items, both are conference with real property negotiators. The properties for both items are identified. Any public comment on either of those items is appropriate at this time.
Okay. Anyone here to address, from the public, address those 2 items, 16 and 17? Seeing we'll close the public oh, you do? You are? I saw a hand. Did you want to address the 2? One of them? Did you want to say something? Please, yeah, come to the podium and you can address us before we move into closed session. And if we can turn on the microphone. Okay, thank you. You can give your name, sir, for the record. No, it was all, okay, there it is.
Okay. My name is Albert Sanchez. I live on Shepherd Avenue in Clovis. And first of all, I'd like to make a correction on the address. It appears that it was incorrect. Our address is 5211 East Shepherd. It looks like it has it listed as 5221 East Shepherd.
Do you have that, Brianna? Okay. Okay, thanks.
So we are one of the property owners that, has been dealing with the city in regards to the purchase of part of our land. So first of all, I just want to say that we disagree with the offer that was given to us by the city of Clovis in regards to the appraised property and the valuation of that property, our property. I disagree with that valuation based on the appraisal that was done back in 2023. So that's the land that they compared our property to was properties were sold back about a year ago. That was the earliest one. The oldest property compared to our property was sold in 2021. And most of them were properties that were sold in 2023. So they are fairly old comparables to today, 2025. So also the value that we disagree with is based on properties that were in South Fresno. So the appraiser did comps, compared our property, which is North Clovis on Shepherd Avenue, to properties that were like near the Fresno Fairgrounds. So like one of the comps was like Butler and Willow, Butler and Maple, Butler and Cedar. I mean, those are all properties that, are not really a comparison to our property on Shepherd Avenue. And the offer that was given to us was $7 a square foot. So we disagree with that comparison and that valuation of our property. So that's one thing. And the other thing is we did contact a realtor to see what properties have sold more recently, and found that the properties that we looked at were more similar to, like property compared to our home on Shepherd. And what we came up with was a valuation of approximately $16.57 a square foot. And those were like properties in areas that were similar to our home on Shepherd Avenue.
What was the dollar figure again, sir?
We came up with an average of $16.57 a square foot, compared to the appraiser at $7 a square foot, which we all know. I mean, most of you probably live in Clovis, and you cannot compare property or dirt price per square foot on Shepherd Avenue compared to land or property that has sold near the Fresno Fairgrounds. I mean, there is just no comparison. And I would think that all of you would probably agree with me on that.
Can you just, you corrected your address to 5211 East Shepherd?
Correct.
So we're talking, I was not like sending a text, I was trying to look to see where your house was. It's Shepherd and Winery area, is that right?
No, we're on Shepherd between Fowler and Sunnyside. So it's 5211 East Shepherd Avenue in Clovis.
Well, there's another one that came up somewhere else. Let me just take a peek.
Well, on the agenda, it's listed at 5221. So I just wanted to make that correction.
Okay, I see. All right.
But the correct address is 5211 East Shepherd Avenue.
I see. Thank you. Got it.
So anyhow, we have had an offer from the city in regards to purchasing, I think it's 3,197 square feet, and the city wants to buy that at $7 a square foot, along with some other items like trees, asphalt, and so forth. But we disagree with that $7 a square foot because you cannot compare land in South Fresno by the Fresno Fairgrounds to land up on Shepherd Avenue between Sunnyside and Fowler. So we would just want you to consider that as you go into your closed session.
Thank you,
Okay.
sir.
Thank you.
Any questions for, okay, the property owner? Okay, one more.
I wanted to say something off the record
Okay.
and then on the record. So I'm gonna do my on the record first.
I don't know if you'll be able to be off the record. Say what you
Maybe I should tell you the other one. I'm Annalisa Gangbin. I'm on 5157 East Shepherd. I happen to be their neighbor next door, so I'm the small click on when you drive real fast. I am looking at Drew because I've been here once. I've been here listening to them all the time, but I've never had the courage to come up and speak, I guess. But you had mentioned something, the last one that we had talked about, that what about the neighbors? And they weren't here at the time, and I was the only one out of the neighbors that you're going to be talking about. And I was listening to the comments that you were saying, so that's why I want to make that my last one. But Drew, the worst thing did come up. I do agree on the estimate they had gave for our property, what they want. I'm not with it at all. Some of the sliver, I'm not good on measuring and how the distance, and you guys have really capped that down. But for you, it did happen. That click on where you meet their trees, if you're looking at the map, we had 2 accidents on our property. The first one, it was I was 24-year-old boy, I guess an adult. He ran into, coming west, he hit the fence, and God willing, the car rolled, and he lived. So I was very happy about that. And I go, it's just a fence. We pay property insurance on our home. Okay, it'd be fine. 6 months later, going east, the opposite fence got hit by a 21-year-old and curled the car into the other side of the fence. So at the time, I thought, again, she lived, and I was happy about that. But I was disappointed this year. It just happened. I said, I'll do the claim. Well, our home insurance canceled us because it's a traffic hazard. Because of the traffic, there is nothing, and I was just, okay, Clovis, I do agree. I agree with what you were saying. I agree with, and I'm sorry, I cannot, when I went down and you said, I see you guys as us. I know you're the mayor and you're the lawyer. I get that, but I know that you're as human as we are. So when that had happened, so now I did not realize, I was in the educational field. I worked all my life. We raised 5 kids. My husband and I, we did it all. Our kids went to college. I thought I was a citizen, and the different reality about what color you are, we're all the same. So that conversation going on that. But we're lack, and I didn't realize that because I talked to a lawyer on how we could get insurance back on our home. We can't. Because of the forest fires, there's a 7-year wait. No one wants to insure California because of the fire hazards. So the only thing I could do is, who do I blame? Well, I blame the builder, the traffic light that was there. There's no light there. But I'm tired of blaming. So when we're offered and they're saying, well, your land is only worth this much, well, it was the convenience that was taken away from me, a citizen, someone that worked hard all her life, raised kids, and then they just say, you know, it's okay. And I believe that great buildings and great everything should be going on. That's what makes us great. So that's why I agree with what you guys were saying. It's not taking that away. We probably should hear more of that in these meetings from you guys, because we forget that you guys are us, you know, and stuff. You have to make decisions for so many people. We don't know what's going there, but being at a school district, I knew what was going there. We needed to educate it. We needed to be, we're not the smartest people in the world, but we had to make sure those children got an education. If we didn't find the answer to it, we were going to get it. And that's what it is. So when now that we don't have, that's why I look at you, because you had said, and I have been flipped off so many times in my own property because I'm afraid to pull out. Now it's fear. Now I don't have, we haven't built, our insurance company, because the adjuster says, oh, by the way, why have you not repaired that? City of Clovis, here's the map. Here's what they're going to do. I don't understand it, but they're going to fix that. So I kind of feel like my husband and I, and they're next door because we have the same driveway now. I mean, that's crazy. I like you guys. So we're right ahead. But that's crazy that happens like that. So no, I don't agree what they're paying. I'm glad Albert always does his homework. So that's what I disagree. I don't disagree the growing. I don't disagree with the parks. I learned a lot. I mean, just sitting here, you know, I lived on the park. That was our free entertainment. I mean, really. So now I know we're in debt. So this free T-shirt, oh, why not? Why can't we have the PTA moms? We used to do it all the time. Why don't we get the communities to do something like that? I mean, it is. It's our area, our space. You want our corner and buy our house and put the park there? We'll have to find a new place. Go for it. But the deal is that I agree what you guys are doing. I just disagree because I kind of feel, I'm looking at the lawyer now, I kind of feel my hands are tied. I have no insurance, home insurance on my property because stupidity. I don't know who to, so I don't, there has to be a solution. So when I'm going to sell that. Okay, well, what are we going to do with the fence now? I have to cross my fingers. And yes, I have gone through Fair Plan. I've done everything I can. There is a 2-year wait because of the forest fires that had happened. Also, my insurance triples. It went from 1,000 some to 10,000 a year. And if I'm lucky, they said after this forest fire goes, don't be surprised it's 20,000. 20,007, that's 140. I figured it out. I'm good at math. So the deal is that that's why I disagree. I kind of felt like, give me at least something to pay the, you know what I'm saying? Because I don't think it was our cause. I think it was the cause of the road, not correct lighting. They just knocked those pecan trees out and accidents. I've never had an accident on that area until, and as soon as those pecan trees came down, it just happened last year.
Thank you, Annalisa.
Yeah.
Thanks
So,
for taking that.
but I thank you for what you guys had done and said today, because I think that was a kitchen talk. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else here to speak on these items? Okay, we're going to go ahead and close that, and we're going to move now into closed session. Thank you, too, for being here this evening. I think there won't be anything to report out, so, yeah.